Everybody, and welcome to Giant Health. I'm here to welcome Matt Whittingham from Gallant Growth, and he's come all the way from Singapore, especially to be here with us and everybody in the audience. So Gallant Growth are a health tech global company that provide deep data to all of the pharmaceuticals and insurance industry. I'll pass over to Matt to tell us all about it. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, and it's great to be here on the second day of the conference, and I hope everybody had a very interesting first day here in London. So thanks for the introduction. Yeah, we're going to talk today about a piece of work that Gallant Growth has just completed. And what we're doing is looking at pharmaceutical partnerships. And increasingly, pharmaceuticals have become very active in partnering with digital health over the last 5 to 10 years. But the question we sort of set ourselves, and we work with a lot of pharmaceutical clients, is, are those partnerships fit for purpose? Are they genuinely impactful on strategy? Or are they more kind of for theatrics and for PR purposes? And so what we've constructed is what we're calling the Pharmaceutical Digital Health Innovation Index. And this is the first year that we've done that, which starts to look at that question. Are these partnerships fit for purpose? So just a little bit about us, and as you heard from Tony, we are a Singapore-based company. We just do digital health. We have an office also in Switzerland, and we have clients typically from insurance and pharmaceutical clients from around the world. And what we do essentially is we go out worldwide and identify every single digital health venture we can, and we collect and aggregate over 200 different data points. Aggregate that into our platform, which is called Health Tech Alpha. We publish all of that data. We organize that data into 16 different health tech clusters, and we assign a maturity score as well to every single venture, and then we publish that into the platform. And then what we do on the client side, we work with insurance and pharmaceutical clients. Typically, those clients are trying to understand the digital health ecosystem and how do they find the right venture from thousands of different possibilities out there that matches an exact problem statement. So we do a lot of scouting work, a lot of consultancy, and a lot of insight work for pharmaceutical and insurance clients. So what does that data look like? So within our systems, we have now over 8,000 startups worldwide integrated into the system. That's around 60 different countries. We cover 5 continents. And as well as the startups, we also ingest investment data. We have a database of every single investor that's making investment into digital health. We track all the partnerships which the digital health ecosystem is doing with the corporates. And there's over 22,000 of those worldwide. And those are generated from 7,500 corporates. So altogether, that's 150 million data points. So a very wide and a very deep data set. So before we get into pharmaceutical specifics, just a quick snapshot really of digital health ventures and what that looks like in 2021. So this is a subset of the 8,100. This is just over 6,000 digital health ventures that are either active or private. So what we're not including here is any that have IPO'd, for example. And by the way, those are excluded from the pharmaceutical analysis. So we're just looking at this particular subset of the total global ecosystem. We continue to see very strong growth in digital health. And in fact, if you're in London here, it's a very vibrant conference, some great technologies and some really fantastic digital health solutions here. So that is continuing to grow. So we're still seeing almost 10% health over the last 5 years. And of course, the pandemic, unfortunately, has meant that probably digital health has never been more important. And you can see some of that also in inbound investment into digital health. So looking at this slide shows global investment levels worldwide or by major region. So Middle East, Europe, APAC, and North America. And if you look at 2021 on the far right of the screen, you can see that as end of October, we're looking at a really blockbuster year for 2021. In fact, it could be over $40 billion worth of investment worldwide going into digital health. That could end up being twice as much as last year. So very substantial inbound investment. You can see here just how huge the US market is. So year to date, or October, 31 billion. That's driven a lot by a couple of things. One is the US market and stock markets in general and investment levels in general are very buoyant despite the pandemic. Secondly, the US market has seen a lot of special share issues through SPACs, and that's become a very established way of raising capital in 2021, so that's contributing to that number. But the other thing is a growing maturity in digital health. So as the sector and category matures, we're seeing a lot more confidence amongst investors and a lot more inbound investment. And just two quick examples there in the US market in 2021. So Sword Health attracted about $150 million worth of funding in its last Series D round. Perhaps even more impressive is Hinge Health, again, US digital therapeutics company looking at musculoskeletal. They just closed a Series E of over $600 million US, giving them a valuation of $4 billion. So this market is still really strong and still growing very strongly. So now let's look at the pharmaceutical piece. So what we set out to do here is understand exactly what's happening with pharmaceutical partnerships. And over the last 5 or 10 years, pharmaceuticals have become very active investors and partners in digital health. And what we're looking to understand here is, does that investment, does that partnership strategy really impact their go-to-market strategy and what they're trying to achieve on a strategic level? So is there a good strategic fit? Secondly, what is the maturity of that digital health portfolio that the pharmaceuticals are investing in? What kind of digital health partnerships and how mature are they? And then combining both of those data points to look at, again, does that partnership strategy lend itself to strategic success, or is it really just theatrics? So here we have an analysis of pharmaceutical partnerships worldwide. And there's 1,100 partnerships done to date worldwide between pharmaco and digital health, which sounds a lot, and it is a lot. However, the top 10 pharmacos actually drive 50% of all partnerships. And in fact, only 30 pharmacos have done more than 5 partnerships in digital health. And it's that 30 plus number that's included in our analysis. So as you can see here, there is a long tail of a couple of hundred pharmacos. They're kind of dabbling in this. They may have done 1 or 2 digital health partnerships, but really a long way to go in terms of that long tail. Many are still experimenting. So the methodology against this innovation index for pharmaco is built really on 2 key things. Firstly, the strategic fit. So this is when you look at, or when we've done the analysis on digital health partnerships worldwide, do they match the global footprint of the multinational pharmacos? Have they done digital health partnerships in those operating markets? Have they integrated the digital health solution partnership into a core therapeutic focus area? So we're going to look at that. That may be the single most important factor here. Thirdly, how well integrated or chosen are the digital health partnerships across the pharma journey in terms of healthcare professional journey, or the pharmaco, or the patient journey. So from research through to manufacturing, through to sales and marketing, through to customer adherence. How well matched across that journey are the partnerships? And lastly, what in terms of the number of partnerships, is that commensurate with the size of the pharmaco? So that's strategic fit. The second major area is the portfolio strength. So this is the second big area of analytics. So here we've looked at every individual digital health company that's partnering with pharmaco, And we're looking at a few things here. We're looking at the management team. A lot of success for any entrepreneurial digital business is kind of wrapped up in the management team. How experienced are they? What are their qualifications? Have they had successful exits previously in digital businesses, etc.? So we look at that digital management team and understand their capabilities. We look at how innovative is a digital health partner in this instance. So that's things like, do they have, how many products do they have? How many markets are they in? Have they achieved regulatory approvals for any of their products? Have they engaged with clinical trials around their products? So that's driving some of the innovative scores that we assign to each venture. Thirdly, financial strength. How much have they raised? What's the valuation? What is the momentum between different funding stages, and what does that look like? So that's financial strength. And that really just gives us an overall score. And I mentioned earlier, we have a platform called HealthTech Alpha. That score is assigned to all of the 8,000 ventures within that platform. So a very easy, quick way of understanding the maturity and impact of a digital health company. So now we look at these two metrics, and now we're going to apply these to the pharmacos. So this first one is the strategic fit. So as I mentioned, that is impact on value chain, global distribution of those partnerships, and thirdly, the match to therapeutic focus area. So top 10, so these are the top 10 pharmaco that we've ranked by strategic fit. So some very familiar names here, and I won't read them all, but Roche, AstraZeneca, and Novartis in the top 3. And you know, all of these companies are doing a pretty good job of strategic fit and really being careful about making sure that their strategic focus areas match, you know, the focus of the digital venture. One thing you'll notice, though, perhaps here is on the right-hand side, the portfolio score. Okay, so that health company. You can see here that the top 3 pharmaco actually don't achieve a top 10 on the portfolio score. So that top 3 have done well in terms of the strategy piece, but the ventures they've selected are perhaps not best in this area. If we switch now to look at portfolio strength, so that is essentially the maturity and ability of the venture to make an impact. Here we see a very different list of companies. So top 3 here, Novo Nordisk, Daiichi Sankyo, Bristol Myers Squibb in the top 3. But again, if you look at the strategic fit score here, these are all not ranking so well. In fact, most of these are outside even the top 20. So what's happening here is that they've done a great job of aligning perhaps with the strategic fit, but the actual portfolio strength of the companies they've selected is not particularly strong. And we're going to look at some specific examples of this in a second. So one of the things here is that it actually is surprisingly difficult when you look at this analysis to get both of these right, to get both strategic fit and to get the right selection of ventures that can deliver against that strategic imperative. So then what we've done is we've mapped top 25 global pharma and biotech onto this 2x2, just in case you can't see some of the lines on here. About 2/3 of the way across here, this y-axis is looking at strategic fit, and then the x-axis across the bottom, 2/3 of the way is the 2/3 of the way up here is the average score in terms of the portfolio strength. So then what we've done is allocated each pharma into the quadrant. So you can see the spread here, and you know, at first glance there is a good selection of companies in optimal, and we're going to look at one of those in a second. So those are companies that have done really well in terms of, you know, high portfolio score, but also a high strategic fit score. When you look at misaligned, if you look at the x-axis, you can see that they're doing well in terms of the venture portfolio selection. The ventures that they partnered with are really strong. However, they're below average on the strategic fit. So this strategic imperative of the pharmaco, which is why we've called that misaligned. And then this box here is really a rethink one, where below average on both scores, which really indicates that that digital portfolio really needs to be examined and reviewed. And then we've got risky at the top left here, which is really, they're doing a reasonable job in terms of the strategic fit, but in terms of some of the venture maturity, they're earlier stage ventures, higher risk, higher degree potentially of failure or not being able to deliver with that selection of ventures. So to take a look at Eli Lilly, one of the top performing pharmacos, and to see what that looks like. So both strategic fit and venture score, this company does really well on. It does well in terms of its number of partnerships, 39. It does well on its geographical distribution as well. A good mix of North America, Asia Pacific, and Europe. And value chain, which I was mentioning earlier, also good coverage, 11 out of 12. And the key therapeutic areas. So on the right here, you can see Lilly's key therapeutic area focus: oncology, immunology, neurology, diabetes, and pain. So for those first four, and we haven't showed every single venture here, Eli Lilly has got a very good, robust set of ventures that are strategically aligned to those 4 or 5 specific areas of focus. They're also investing, just as a sort of side note, in some non-core therapeutic areas. In fact, down the bottom there, Gaia, mental health company. Mental health has become, over the last year, a really key area of therapeutic focus. In fact, in the US and Europe, it's actually now the #1 area of investment around therapeutic area. And you can see Eli Lilly is also looking at mental health here. So that's optimal. So Eli Lilly doing very well. Now we're going to look at this rethink area, where this is suboptimal, both in terms of strategic fit and venture maturity score. And here we have Biogen. Perhaps a surprise to see a well-known company like Biogen here, but not doing quite as well on strategic fit or venture score. Only 9 partnerships here, very focused in North America, and not distributed at all in Asia Pac, for example. Value chain, not bad, 8 out of 12. Their key therapeutic area of neurology, they do have coverage there, but the two in the middle here, Motognosis and AdCNTM, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but those two do not rank as highly. They're around the 50 or 60 score mark out of a possible 100. So they're slightly, I wouldn't say weaker, but they're slightly kind of suboptimal versus the peer group in neurology, which has dragged down this venture score here and has led to Biogen being in a suboptimal sort of area, in a rethink area. So just getting to the end of the presentation now, just a real quick look at 3 interesting digital health ventures who are doing amazing work with driving partnerships with Pharmaco. So first, Chinese company called Apricot. They do electronic medical record analysis, very high maturity score of 81.5 out of a possible 100. All of these have done more than 10 Pharmaco partnerships. These guys have done Sanofi, Novo, Nordisk, AstraZeneca, Lilly, MSD, Abbott, and more. Then we have 2 clinical trial companies, and perhaps no surprise that a lot of focus in clinical trial from Pharmaco. So Eligo and Pfizi. This first company here, 78.2 on the maturity score, so again, very high scoring. AstraZeneca, Lilly, Merck, Amgen, AbbVie, Bristol Myers. And then Pfizi, another US company, not quite as strong, 67.5, but AstraZeneca, Sanofi, Lilly, Pfizer, Novartis, Bayer, AG, Takeda, amongst others. So all 3 of these are doing a very impactful job partnering with Pharmaco. So just drawing to a conclusion, what can we draw from this? So I think the biggest takeout is perhaps that it's not as easy as you might think to get both of these strategic fit and the digital health maturity really singing and working together at the same time. It's a very dynamic area, as I mentioned earlier. So things are changing all the time. So one of the key points here is to address the ever-evolving nature of digital health. Clearly, as investment levels change in specific digital health, if a new round of investment is released, there may be a pivot that the digital health company is perhaps doing that makes it less aligned to the original partnership intent with the pharmaco. The pharmaco's own strategy may have evolved since the partnership started, which has thrown the alignment out as well. So our 5 key recommendations here really are, firstly and most importantly, be aligned to the therapeutic area and make sure that a regular portfolio analysis is being done. And when you do that analysis, have an impartial view as possible. Try and get to an unbiased view of that digital health venture portfolio. It's very easy to get attracted to latest digital health companies that perhaps got a big funding round, a lot of publicity, perhaps a competitor. There's a very public partnership announcement around that, and it acts a bit like a honey jar with a lot of activity and froth. So our advice is try and step away from that and get to an impartial view and really carefully review that particular competitor, venture with its competitive peer set. Secondly, broad distribution of solutions across the value chain. Thirdly, high potential ventures. Really make sure your analytics on digital health ventures is robust and unbiased. And that's where a platform like HealthTech Alpha can really help, which assigns this score to all digital health ventures impartially, just based on performance. Fast moving market, I think I've mentioned that. And lastly, be relevant across your operating markets. Many markets, as I think everybody will realize, are often very bespoke. In APAC, where we're based, you have very developed markets like Hong Kong and Singapore, and then you have emerging markets like Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, etc. So very different kind of operating regulatory markets. So make sure that your strategy is reflecting your operating markets in your digital health selection. So that's really it. We'll take a few questions if there are any. One thing I was going to leave you with, and I don't have the slide here for some reason, but one thing I was going to leave you with is that there is a 30-page full report which goes into a lot more detail than what I've showed you. So if you head to gallongrowth.com/research, gallongrowth.com/research, you'll see our Pharmaceutical Innovation Index published today. It's free, so please go and download it. As well as Biogen and Eli Lilly, there's a much fuller list of other pharmacos that have had the same analytics applied to it. So please go take a look at that. So thank you for your time. I hope you found that interesting. I think we've got a few minutes. If there's any questions, I would be very happy to take some. Yeah.
So the tool, it's Nigel Harris from West of England Academic Health Science Network. The tools you've described and the system are really excellent, and I can see, really will deliver value, are really powerful. What would you advise around sort of early stage digital startups? So maybe just got the product to market, looking to start to scale. What would you say to them in terms of helping them on their growth trajectory?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this advice probably applies to any digital health startup that's looking to partner with a large corporation, whether that's insurer or pharma. I'd say a couple of things. One is all of these organizations are really complex. There's lots of internal dynamics between global teams, regional teams, and market teams. The biggest piece of advice I would give them is find the champion, find the internal champion who will help you navigate through those Byzantine corridors internally. So that's really key. I think the second one is use that champion to help you find other stakeholders within the organization and really truly understand the motivations of those stakeholders and what are they looking to achieve. It sounds kind of an obvious thing, but sometimes there are some strange internal dynamics. So really going to make sure that you understand that piece. I think the third one is your digital health proposition, make sure that is super clear. Make sure also that you're looking at kind of research like this and you're really analyzing the pharmaco, and that's looking at annual reports and all the data you can get hold of. What really are they what problem are they trying to solve? What therapeutic area are they trying to solve? Be very, very clear about how your solution matches to that problem statement. So that's probably 3 key things. Yeah.
Hi, Matt. Thank you
Hi.
for the really interesting talk there.
Pleasure.
I just wanted to ask, where do you see pharmaceutical partnerships and digital health evolving over the next couple of years?
Thanks for that question. What we hope happens is that there's perhaps a more dynamic way of them managing their portfolio and making regular portfolio evaluations impartially, using some of the techniques we've outlined here to really take a step back and say, is this digital health portfolio truly matching our original intent around this? I'm joined here by my colleagues, Sarah and Julian, and there's some nodding heads, which is great, which means they can hear me. Julian, Sarah, anything you'd like to add to that?
Let me jump in quickly. So thanks for the question. Julian Celebre is CEO and founder of Gale & Growth, based in Switzerland. We work with a lot of pharmacos, and we're certainly hoping and expecting and have seen signs of this from many of the pharmacos we're working with, that the franchise side of pharmacos is taking a far more engaged role in digital health strategy rather than it being seen as a initiative on the periphery of the core business. We are certainly starting to see some of the pharmacos that we work with taking a much closer interest at their portfolio, recognizing that these have grown organically over the last 5 to 10 years, depending on how precocious they were in relation to digital health in the early years of digital health. And we hope that they are, and that's part of our role, looking at their portfolio, looking at market expectations and how those are changing. More important, looking at how the patient journey, for example, is evolving, and therefore how they best address that patient journey, not through specific one-off type relationships, which are much more akin to experimentation, but looking at more integrated solutions to address specific components of the patient journey, for example, or of the HCP journey, or of the R&D side, depending on which piece of the value chain they belong to. So we expect to see smarter choices, and choices that are much more driven by pain points, and solving those pain points in a smart way, as Matt was iterating earlier on.
Thank you so much for that. And just quickly, another question. Do you plan on doing this innovation index every year from now on?
I will let Sarah. Sarah, do you want to take that one? Are we going to do the? I don't know if you heard that. We're going to do this every year.
That is the plan. Yes, we look forward to updating it and make sure that it remains current every year.
And thanks, Sarah. And just to add to that, I mean, one of the interesting things that we start to do this on a year basis, we're going to see trends emerging. How dynamic are pharmacos reacting to changing market circumstances and innovation in the marketplace, etc. So I think it's going to be very interesting looking at this score going forward.
I think it's worth adding as well that we'll look at other verticals too. So Matt, I know, has voiced interest in looking at the insurers and payers and seeing how they're looking at their portfolios. So we'll learn from this report and the feedback we get, and we'll look at other verticals in the course of 2022.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. A question from me. I'm particularly interested in complementary therapies and comorbidities, for example, diabetes or cardiovascular with mental health conditions. Is this an area which is very important for the AHSNs and also the NHS and the other areas to actually manage comorbidities more effectively, because the cost of a diabetes patient with anxiety and stress is something like 3 times more than somebody just with diabetes alone. Do you see complementary therapy research and collaboration growing, or is it an area which pharma are a little bit cautious about?
Julian, would you like to take that one?
Actually, I'll ask Sarah to take that one, but I will add to what Sarah has to say on a slightly related topic. But Sarah, do you want to address that question? I know you've been looking at it very closely lately.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. And at Galen Growth, we also do consulting work with our clients, and we have seen clients coming to us asking for those comorbidities and those having as well, not only once the patient is diagnosed with the first disease, then having the additional therapy areas come in to make sure that the whole patient is addressed. Yes.
So the only two things I would add to that very quickly is we're also seeing more mature ventures moving into or recognizing comorbidity, and therefore moving from, say, diabetes into cardiovascular. One Drop is an example of that in the US, for example. On a vaguely related comorbidity level, we're seeing quite a few pharmacos also looking at mental health state of patients that are on or affected by a particular chronic disease. If you look at Lilly's profile that Matt was showing earlier on, you'll see that Eli Lilly is looking at mental health quite closely, despite it not being a core therapeutic area for them, but because, of course, cancer patients are in need of support.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Matthew, for being here today. I just want to remind everybody, gallongrowth.com research is where this very comprehensive report will be. And also, thank you, Matthew, for being such a detailed and insightful presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of Giant Health. And today I'd like to, and this morning I'd like to introduce Alex from Cognitant. And what happens is the question, what happens when somebody's diagnosed with an illness? Unfortunately, they go straight to Dr. Google, they get all the wrong information, and we need to intercept that and find a better way. So Alex will explain to us how, with her Healthy Note platform, Cognitant, she can educate patients better and actually get to a better solution with the GPs and the whole medical journey. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Alex Merks, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Partnerships at Cognitant. And today I want to explore the question, can avatars play a role in the future of healthcare? Now, I chose this topic because at Cognitant, we make a lot of use of avatars for our patient education programs. And I thought it would be useful today to explore a little bit what we've learned so far, and also whether we think that avatars could be part of a positive solution for the healthcare services of the future. So, we'll look at, first of all, why do we need to consider innovations for healthcare? Are innovations needed? Also, if we look at innovations that are happening in healthcare, what are the ones that are using avatar technology already? And then, perhaps most importantly, is there any evidence for avatars being able to deliver a positive impact on healthcare? But just to backtrack a little bit, first of all, when I was preparing for this talk, I started to wonder what thoughts people might already have on the subject. And therefore, I followed a very unscientific approach. And I asked a few friends the question without giving them any context at all. I asked them, do you think avatars could play a role in the future of healthcare? And they came back to me mostly with just lots of questions. And the first question that they asked was, what's an avatar? And so I thought that that was actually a very good question that we should cover off first of all. So an avatar is a digital representation of a character. So you can see examples of avatars here on the screen, and you'll have come across some of them already before in your daily lives. So avatars can be used in social media. They're found on chatbots. There's some virtual events that are making use of avatars now. And of course, people have a lot of fun playing with avatars in computer games. So these are all quite sort of simple examples of avatars, but avatars can also exist in a very sort of more complex and sophisticated way. And we'll talk about some of those in a bit. The next question that I had from my friends were, but what will the avatar do? You know, are they going to do my surgery? Are they going to take my blood tests? Am I just going to have a nice chat with them? So I thought that that was a really good question as well. And we'll cover that off in a little while. We'll have a look at examples where avatar technology is already being used in healthcare. But I wanted to share, first of all, the next sort of statement that was the most common statement amongst my friends after that. And that was, I'm afraid that I'm rather traditional and I like to see real people. And my response to that would be, yes, of course. You know, we know that 70% of people still trust their healthcare professional above anyone else to give them reliable health advice. You know, our doctors and nurses are the very bedrock of our health services, and without them, they would crumble. But I think it's also important to recognize that our health services are under a lot of strain, and this is happening across the globe. So let's have a look at a little bit more detail around that global growing strain that we're seeing with our healthcare services. We're living in an aging population. We're expected now to live to an average age of 81. And the Office of National Statistics has said that by 2035, 25% of the world's population will be in the over 65 cohort. Meanwhile, the number of people who are being diagnosed with 4 or more long-term conditions will double from 2015 to 2035. And the result is that clinicians are under a lot of strain. They're seeing patients with multiple long-term conditions, with polypharmacy, set within an underfunded infrastructure, and they're time poor. On average, a GP, for example, gets to see a patient in the consultation for about 10 minutes. So the result is a lot of clinicians, unfortunately, are leaving the profession. In the UK, for example, we have 1,800 less GPs than we did in 2015. A few more statistics to share with you. In 2013, the World Health Organization warned that there will be a shortfall of 12.9 million healthcare workers globally by 2035. And the medical futurist has mentioned that over half of the world's population is lacking access to essential healthcare. So I think we can all agree that there is a need for some sort of solution and innovations to help relieve that pressure on our health services. But the question is, can avatars play a part in that solution? Well, there's research that suggests that they potentially could. Shafi et al., for example, in 2015, said that those who receive tailored guidance and advice from avatars appear to have better physical and psychosocial outcomes, as the digital characters can be customized for cultural, social, and other user preferences. But in that case, if we're going to use avatars, to go back to my friend's question, what will the avatar do? So we can have a look at a few examples where avatar technology is already being used in healthcare. So in surgery, for example, avatar technology is being used to convert patients into avatars on the computer. And this is allowing for surgeons to carry out surgery with unprecedented precision. And in brain and spine surgery, for example, it's allowing for surgery that before wasn't possible because of navigational issues. Of course, this is also really helpful for training in surgery. The Visual Human Project is helping to create these types of avatars. They have made publicly available, anatomically accurate 3D representations of the human body, both in the male and female form. And then we have digital twin technology, which is being used in a number of industries. And within the healthcare industry, it's allowing for patient data to be collated, a real breadth of data, including information on the genetic makeup of a person from genome sequencing. And of course, by building up this digital model of a patient, you can then apply AI technology, you can run simulations, and you can start to design a really personalized response to their healthcare. And then we've got medical records. IBM, for example, is using avatar technology to show visual representations of certain location-specific areas in the patient record. And then we have patient education, which is the area that we're in at Cognitant. And this is where companies are taking advantage of the fact that avatars can be engaging, they can be fun, they bring a human touch to information, they're available 24/7, they can speak multiple languages, etc. iCare Navigator have created avatar nurses that give information to patients within the hospital. They can give information, guidance, encouragement, and they can be accessed on phones and iPads and on the hospital TV. And their work was inspired by Boston University School of Medicine that ran some research where they developed some virtual nurses to coach patients on information such as how to take medication. And their research found that, in fact, 74% of patients preferred to receive discharge instructions from a virtual nurse instead of a human. And then we have Cognitant. And at Cognitant, we're developing avatar-led, engaging, interactive, visual education for patients. And we do that in order to give patients deeper understanding of their conditions and treatment. So ultimately, we're looking to help people better understand and manage their health to ultimately drive better health outcomes for them. And our patient education programs can be viewed on a phone, on a tablet, and also a number of our programs can be watched in virtual reality. So the big question is, are these all gimmicks, or can they genuinely deliver a positive impact on healthcare? Well, in order to answer this question, we can have a look at a few examples of programs that we've run at Cognitant where we've measured some of the impact. So I can talk to you first of all about a program that we ran for patients with chronic kidney disease. We developed this with the Royal Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust. And first of all, to give you a bit of background, the challenge that we were trying to face was 3 million people approximately in the UK have chronic kidney disease. A lot of them find it really difficult to understand the information that they're given about their condition. And therefore, unfortunately, it's leading to avoidable complications, progressions, and therefore an impact on their quality of life. And then meanwhile, the clinicians just don't have the time, sufficient time to give that additional information that would make a difference. So the solution that we came up with was this avatar-led education program, and it was looking to educate people on understanding diagnosis, understanding the staging, and to help them look after their renal health, with the ultimate aim of reducing avoidable complications and also helping to reduce demand on resources. So we wanted to measure the impact of this educational program versus giving a traditional form of education in text. So we actually also designed the same information but in traditional text format with accompanying graphs. And I'm just going to pause there for a second to share a video. It's quite a quick video, but hopefully it'll give you a taster of what the program looked like. You can't sound. It's normally got music, but it doesn't matter. So, as I say, that was rather quick, but hopefully it gives you a flavor of what the program looked like. So the pilot that I mentioned was run for 1 year with 2 test groups. There was one set of patients that received the traditional form of education in written format, and then there was one group that received the avatar-led education. This graph represents some of the results from this. The blue bar represents the people who received the written format, and the orange bar represents the people who received the avatar-led education. And you can see that the group that received the avatar-led education reported a better improvement in their knowledge about their chronic kidney disease. They also said that it was easier to find the content. They found it easier to understand it. And 100% of the people would recommend the avatar-led education to a friend. A GP who made use of sharing this information with their patients with chronic kidney disease said that this provides high-tech, high-quality information, making it more accessible to patients that struggle with literacy. And then just to sort of complete the story about this particular program, after 1 year, the program, I'm pleased to say, is still being used, and we're now translating it into Nepalese, Urdu, Punjabi, and Polish. We're applying cultural adaptation, and we're applying also additional subject areas around acute kidney disease. Now, to move on to another case study. This is an avatar-led piece of education to teach children about how to use their adrenaline auto-injector. And this was run as part of a research study with Cardiff University. In this case, the avatar was a furry cat called Fismo. So again, to give you a bit of background, first of all, anaphylaxis is the most severe form of an allergic reaction, and it's life-threatening. At least 1 in 40 children in the UK are suffering from at least one serious allergy. Now, children are normally trained about how to use their adrenaline auto-injector by a nurse face-to-face, but of course with COVID-19, that enforced some limitations. And therefore, the group at Cardiff University were really interested in looking into whether there was potential for using an interactive avatar-led video to help carry that training out remotely instead. So again, we carried out a study, and again with 2 groups. One group of children received the avatar interactive video with Fismo, and the other group received the traditional form of education with led by a nurse. And the groups were assessed after their training with the following. They were asked to identify whether they could place the auto-injector or the pen on the thigh, whether they knew how to use a fist grip around the pen, whether they knew to remove the blue safety cap, use the place and press technique until they heard the pen click, and whether they knew that they then had to hold it in place for 3 seconds. And then the group who received the avatar-led education with Fismo were also asked to answer these questions with a range of smiley and unsmiley faces. And it was, the questions were, did you enjoy watching the video? Did you like how it looked? Did you learn anything? Do you feel you know how to use your auto-injector now? And would you watch more videos like this? And to show you some of the results, so this is around the competence assessment. You can see the graph on the right-hand side. The blue bar represents the people who received the interactive video with Fismo, and the orange bar represents the people who received the traditional form of education with the nurse. And you can see that for all the competencies, the video with Fismo was at least as good. And you can see in certain areas, it actually, there was better response with the video. In particular, for the assessment of the criteria of whether they knew to hold the pen in place for 3 seconds, there was a much better result with the group that had followed the interactive video with Fismo. And then in terms of the questions that had been asked to the group that had seen the avatar-led education with Fismo, you can see that 100% of the children said that they really enjoyed watching the video, they really liked how it looked, and 96% of them said that they'd like to watch more videos like that, for example, to see information on how to carry out first aid. This is a nice quote from Dr. David Tuthill, who was the consultant pediatrician as part of the research study. And he said that being able to improve how children recall the information they are given is transformational. And I just want to end on one final note, and that's around the question around the different versions of avatars. Avatars can exist in different formats. They can appear as within 2D animations, they can appear as 3D models, but still viewed on a screen, and they can exist as 3D models that are viewed within a virtual reality environment with VR goggles. is there a preference between them? Now, there is some research that suggests that a truly immersive experience following education using VR goggles does offer some benefit in terms of memory recall and helping to encourage a sort of user behavior. Arn S.J. et al., for example, has said that gamification, virtual avatars, and using immersive technologies like virtual and augmented reality are increasingly being shown to have the ability to change user behavior. And meanwhile, Krokos et al. Talk about how immersion using virtual reality headsets allows viewers to create what they call memory palaces and can increase fact recall. And on the left-hand side, the visuals that I've shown here are actually visuals from a research project that we carried out in Colombia with Oxford Brookes University and with the University Hospital of Bogota in Colombia. And we ran some research carrying out developing an avatar-led program, educational program for people with diabetes. We prepared the education in 3 different formats: 2D animation, 3D, but still viewed on the screen, and then 3D avatars set within a VR immersive environment. And the overall result was that patients did actually say that they preferred the VR experience and felt that they recalled more information from that. So to conclude, my question at the beginning was, can avatars play a role in the future of healthcare? And my answer would be that I think that they can. I think this is because avatars have characteristics that we have proven we can exploit positively. They're available 24/7. They can speak multiple languages. They can integrate into existing systems, and they can be used by anyone, anytime, in any place. And that means that we can provide information and education in a really accessible and engaging way. To respond again to my friend's comment of they prefer to see humans, this is not about replacing our amazing doctors and nurses, but I do believe that avatars can be symbiotic with traditional healthcare services. So to conclude, I believe that with careful user-centric thought, avatars can create supportive, accessible, and meaningful interaction that will help to relieve pressures on our healthcare services across the globe. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. That was very clear and persuasive, and I've no doubt that avatars are a very effective means of communication. I'm just interested in knowing a little bit more about the study that you did with the Royal Berkshire around the numbers of patients that you looked at over that 12 months, whether you looked at a cross-section of demographics, because maybe younger or older people prefer information in this way, and whether you actually looked at information retention. So you said you did surveys around whether people liked it, but you didn't give any data around whether people actually retained more information. So did you do any tests around knowledge retention?
So that's a really good question. And in terms of numbers involved, I think I might refer to my our CEO here, who's Dr. Tim Ringrose, and he was involved in a little bit more detail about that research. So.
Yeah, thanks. We had something like 200 patients involved. The chronic kidney disease is generally a disease that affects older people. We did have some younger people. What we found was some of the people in the older categories had a little bit of hesitancy and sometimes needed their family to help them access the information. But once they got over that hurdle, they really found it easy to use and felt comfortable using it. We haven't yet done any studies looking at recall of information in that particular study, but it's something that we plan to do. And as you can see, we're now converting it into different languages to try to address some of the groups for whom English isn't their first language. And as you probably know, that there's quite a high incidence of renal failure in some of those groups. So, but that's a really good thing for us to test, which we'll make sure we add in. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Hi, thank you very much. That was a really, really well put together presentation, and it's excellent to see that the issues in terms of, we can see, I think it was by 2035, there's going to be 18,000 less GPs and quite a considerable number in healthcare professionals. It's going to reduce. So of course, avatars and such likes are a really strong way forward. It was excellent to understand the patient engagement with avatars. And we're just wondering here, so you said there that currently you're localizing and translating into different languages to really engage that group of patients that English isn't their first language. It'd be great to understand a little bit more around how you're doing that and what that looks like. Is there any feedback in terms of the patient engagement with the community, the ethnic minority groups? That English isn't their first language?
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of common knowledge that health literacy is a problem. And we find that I think it's around about 45% of people who truly have the health literacy to understand the typical patient information leaflet that you're given. A lot of the problem is often that people are given information in a language that is not their first language as well. For example, in the UK, we have so many languages spoken, and typically people are given information just in English. And that's what I meant in terms of one of the benefits of avatars is that you can translate them so easily. They can speak in multiple languages. And that's why, for example, with the chronic kidney disease program, we're now translating into those 4 additional languages. At the moment, we're working on a basis of, where we requested it, where it's commissioned, we carry out the translation. But we'd love in the future for us to, have the capability and technology to be able to just offer all languages for all programs just automatically.
Do you anticipate sort of using avatars, from just accessing information to sort of more behavior change, coaching, sort of care management, outside of sort of accessing information?
Do you mean in terms of providing care to a particular patient?
Yes, I think sort of, yes, from a more care management perspective. So, for example, the chronic kidney disease, not just, probably the first level being, do you have access to information, knowing your condition, but then how are they implementing it and taking ownership of it and monitoring it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's another area that we're very interested at looking into. We'd love to sort of bring in sort of remote monitoring and to gather information from the patient, both sort of, ask them to respond to certain questions about how they're managing their care. Potentially with remote monitoring, you can sort of gather a lot of data, and we'd love to be in the position to then respond to that data by triggering notifications of really personalized health information along the patient journey, which I think can help a lot in terms of the preventative medicine.
Thank you, Alex. That's a fantastic, very memorable and accessible and impactful presentation, which I think all of your stuff does. Question for me: do you work with charities and pharmaceutical companies in preparing this sort of health literacy?
Yeah, co-creation is really, really important to us. So it's not about just us sitting in an ivory tower and creating education on our own. We always follow a very robust co-creation process where we bring in patients, we bring in clinicians, all the stakeholders that are important to helping design a patient education program that's truly going to be impactful and make a difference to the patient.
Brilliant. So I think in conclusion, we can say that can avatars play a role in the future of healthcare? So a resounding yes. So thank you, Alex, and from Cognizant. So we're going to take a thank you. So I think next time you become with your avatar, won't you? Not personally, right? Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We have an exciting 5 companies from SAP.io program incubation, and I'd like to welcome the first of these companies, Orbiter, to join us virtually now. Hi, over to you.
Hello, I'm Patty Riskin, and I am the CEO of Orbita, and Orbita is a conversational AI company. And we use virtual assistants to help automate workflows, improve outcomes, and make life more efficient for healthcare. And can everyone see the slide that I'm sharing? know if I can get any feedback. Well, I'm going for it. So today I'm going to talk to you about Beyond the Bot, using virtual assistants to help engage patients with conversational AI. And today we know that healthcare consumers want the same thing that every other consumer wants: instant gratification, to feel known, to have a streamlined, personalized experience when engaging with the healthcare system. And they want interactions that are going to work and be simple and straightforward. As during COVID, we've realized that digital solutions have been in high demand, and that healthcare organizations have had to use things like telehealth and virtual visits to see patients when they couldn't see them in person. So we saw an increase of 38 times the number of visits being used, turning into virtual assistants and telehealth. And during COVID, other digital solutions were used that consumers and patients really liked, and they don't want those solutions to go away. And today, 75% of consumers believe that their healthcare encounters should be like an Uber experience or OpenTable or other online experiences that allow them to gain access and to use the healthcare system in a way that's easy, online, and instant. And we also know that virtual assistants can address approximately 80% of routine tasks, like scheduling an appointment, symptom triage, finding a doctor or a location. So the key today is really taking advantage of virtual assistants to help make navigating healthcare easier. Our intention is to help improve access and timeliness of care, streamline outreach and awareness building and education, allow for enhanced adherence and compliance to treatment protocols, and ultimately making the life of those who work in healthcare easier by letting processes and systems be much more efficient. If you think of the entire care continuum, there are multiple points of friction, from the front end in terms of gaining awareness and education about how to utilize the healthcare system, through the actual utilization of health, whether that's in an inpatient or an outpatient setting, and post-visit or post-discharge from an ongoing maintenance, monitoring, and maintenance of health. There are ways that we can improve the process. And virtual assistants help do that. Text, email, voice, and chatbots. Healthcare systems can help connect the dots between points of interaction across the care journey. And using these different omni-channel approaches, we help healthcare organizations act with systems of record like SAP or electronic health record systems or CRMs, pulling data out, engaging with someone across the care journey at these different touch points, and ultimately helping them reach a conclusion. And that may be taking action, or that may be engaging with the healthcare system in a virtual way. There's any number of use cases that can leverage different technologies in order to get things to work. So the virtual assistant solutions are really designed to help decrease implementation time, improve the patient experience, engage those patients along the journey, and enhance the workflow so that the burden on staff is minimized. So some specific examples of virtual assistants are symptom triage. And this is something that was definitely leveraged during COVID and continues to be, where someone could go to a website, engage with a chatbot, ask specific questions, or put in what their symptoms are, and get either reassurance or directed to the right place to help address the issues that they're facing. Finding a location or a provider is often difficult. And so whether it's through a chatbot or through outreach, if someone can receive a bi-directional text asking them for where a primary care physician is located, or providing characteristics that they're looking for, whether it's where someone went to medical school or their gender, or if they treat a certain of condition, as well as online review information. All of that can be incorporated into a virtual assistant that allows making a finding of a physician or a location so much easier. Appointment scheduling is also a point of friction in the healthcare system. And when an order is placed by a physician for a patient to see, say, a particular specialist or make a certain type of appointment, say a colonoscopy, if a patient were to receive a text that would say, validate who they are, and then take them through a process of easily scheduling an appointment, picking a location, the time they want, and then walking them through all the pre-surgical prep or pre-procedure prep so they know what to expect, when to show up, and then if they run into a conflict and have to reschedule, it's easily done all through an interaction with the virtual assistant. Of course, there's the need to occasionally see or actually talk to a live human being. And a virtual assistant where you might engage with a chatbot or a text, email, or through voice using interactive voice response or a smart speaker. Ability for a virtual assistant to understand and to interpret what someone's saying so they recognize when to escalate to a live human. So for example, you don't want someone to get so frustrated with the interaction and then suggest, but a good virtual assistant anticipates. So based on how someone is speaking or what they're typing into the interface, they can recognize, oh, I think you need to talk to a human being, and then bring someone into that chat or onto the line for click to call in order to take care of that patient. We also can recognize when somebody's having an incident, such as I feel chest pain or I think I'm going to pass out. They can instantly escalate to a human being to help them engage. Registering people for programs. So I know health systems do a lot of outreach to engage with specific types of patients with conditions or for fitness, any number of things as it relates to maintaining health as well as addressing certain chronic conditions. We can enlist people by integrating forms, videos, pamphlets, all kinds of content into a virtual assistant that can engage and sign up for follow-up. On the marketing front, we're using virtual assistants to help address and bring in new patients. So for example, a QR code can be part of a billboard or any kind of advertisement where if someone, for example, needs a mammogram or a colonoscopy, they can use their phone. We all got used to using QR codes during COVID to draw them in, fill out a number of relevant questions to make sure that they're appropriate for whatever is being promoted, and sign them up. Similar to the program registration, we can sign them up for different visits or different types of screening programs. We also can create conversational banner ads. So instead of just a regular banner ad that you click on and it takes you through, it's actually a bot which can engage with someone and get real information about what they're looking for, who they are, what insurance they have, and then figure out the appropriate way to triage. So the return on investment from this type of marketing is easily measured and impactful. Remote patient monitoring is another application for virtual assistants where it's doing outreach. In this case, we're showing an echo, and it could be through a smart speaker such as Alexa or Google, or just the telephone using IVR, or it can be email or text, where it's checking in on a patient, making sure they're staying compliant with their treatment protocol. And it can also be connected with the Internet of Things, such as scales or monitors. For example, we're integrated with Medtronic's pacemaker application. So if something goes awry, we can reach out to that patient, understand how they're feeling, and take appropriate next steps if they need to be escalated to see their doctor or go to the emergency room. With virtual assistants, we have seen real success in terms of automating workflows, reducing costs, and improving experience. 75 to 85% of the time, we are effective in engaging with a user. So we'll use an omni-channel approach to do outreach, trying first with phone, and if we can't reach someone, then text, then email, or whatever order works for that particular user. And as a result, we have high engagement, which then leads to high conversions. 97% of the time when someone interacts with the virtual assistant, they end up completing what was intended, whether that's scheduling an appointment, understanding the educational information that we're sharing, or taking action in terms of escalating to a live agent or making sure that there's follow through from a remote patient monitoring perspective. We had one patient saved over $2 million in terms of what their use case with the virtual assistant. They did call center deflection and were able to save over 15 full-time employees because the virtual assistant was able to address those common questions and not have to utilize a live person through the call center. The customers that Orbita works with range across providers, payers, life science, and med tech. We have a number of different organizations that are using us for a variety of use cases, many of which I shared today, and are taking advantage of a digital approach to help improve efficiencies and effectiveness. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share the story of Orbita and virtual assistants with you today. And if you have any questions, here's my email. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patty, for the great presentation. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but thank you for explaining Orbita to us. Next on line is Vyasa Analytics, which is another company from the SAP IO Foundry and Incubator program. And they do deep analytics for the healthcare sector. And I'll pass over to Vyasa coming from Boston right now. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome back to the SAP IO Showcase. And next on the stage, we have Check It, Nikki-san, Head of Growth, all the way from Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nsika, and I'm the Head of Growth at Check It. So Check It is an anti-counterfeit and consumer intelligence products. So imagine a loved one or someone you know dying from consuming fake products or drugs in the market. Over the years, we hear countless stories of people that have died from consuming drugs that they thought by taking it they were going to get better, or just products that they just wanted to consume. According to WHO, shows that over 100,000 people die every year in West Africa because of counterfeit anti-malarial medicine. In addition to the cost of lives, the human tragic cost of lives, this has also caused losses in has also caused some form of commercial losses. It said that over about 40,000 products in FMCGs, the fast-moving consumer goods products and pharmaceutical products, are counterfeit. So imagine basically we're saying that at least companies are losing about 40% of their market share to counterfeit products in the markets. This has also led to over $300 billion in losses every year to businesses. So now, this is where Check It comes in. Check It has created a disruptive software, a disruptive anti-counterfeit and consumer intelligence software that has basically been created to solve the problem of anti-counterfeits in the markets. Let me show you how this works. So using our dashboard, basically what you do is a manufacturer can create unique IDs for products, and our system then logs the identity on the FTM blockchain ledger. The unique IDs are then converted to QR codes, which are added to the packaging labels for all the products placed on the shelves. So consumers basically walk into the stores, they see the QR code, and they can either scan the code or they can use the USSD platform. So either for whatever reasons that they decide to, either they don't have a camera phone or they don't have internet. So they can then use the USSD code. Once they do this, they automatically get response to show the verification of the product, to show the authenticity of the product. Furthermore, manufacturers can kind of set survey questions on this platform as well. So when consumers actually scan the products, after checking the verification of the products, they can also answer some survey questions that the manufacturers have set. What this does is it bridges the gap between the manufacturers and the consumers then get to give the direct feedback to the manufacturers, which has never actually really been done before. I mean, yes, we know that manufacturers send out surveys from time to time on how companies feel about their products, but they've actually never really had live feedback there and then at the point of purchase when the consumers are getting the product. So this is just a visual representation of the consumers walking into a store, picking up a product, scanning it, and getting instant feedback. So all these services are under one of our products, which is called the Consumer Intelligence product. And right now we're running a pilot on our machine learning, on our image recognition tool, which uses machine learning to identify fake packages on this shelf simply by taking a picture of it. So now you don't necessarily have to scan the products using the QR code or using the USSD. You can actually take a picture of the product and upload it on our platform, and you can get instant feedback on the product. So Check-It is actually it's a B2B model. So by this, I mean, the manufacturers are actually the ones that pay for the products and not the consumers. So the consumers get to use the products for free. We currently offer two primary products, the Consumer Intelligence and the Machine Learning Image Recognition, which I just spoke about, that's currently running through a pilot phase right now. Since Check-It launched in 2018, we've grown by over 3,000% since its launch. Check-It has saved its clients up to 70% cost, and only about 5% of that 70% cost is Check-It's cost. To date, our QR codes have been distributed to more than 30 million products in Nigeria across the pharmaceutical industry and the FMCG. So up here, I just have a visual representation of one product representing one particular industry. So Glucophage, which is under Merck, representing the pharmaceutical industry, and Amazing Day, which is a product from Flour Mills, a company back in Nigeria, representing the FMCG, basically just showing that Check-It covers pharmaceuticals and FMCGs as well. We've also been able to protect, survey, and engage over 300,000 customers through our platform. And as I mentioned earlier, one of our biggest clients in the pharma space being Merck today, which is currently rolling us out on over 7 million products in the market. We've also been able to raise over $600,000 in equity and grants. And we have we've been able to roll out we've been able to raise over $600,000 in equity and grants. We have about 18,000 pharma distributors and FMCG manufacturers in Africa, and they generate over $1 trillion revenue. Technical glitch. Okay, so today we're happy to announce our partnership with SAP. We'll be partnering with SAP to expand our businesses across the shores of Africa and Middle East. So one of the things that we're doing with SAP is basically leveraging on the SAP's serialization and ATTP solution to put in our consumer intelligence solution and our anti-counterfeit solution for customers to identify original and fake products in the market. So consumers could also use this mechanism, manufacturers rather, could also use this mechanism to engage with brands and to engage with consumers, and consumers in turn use this platform to engage with manufacturers directly to get insights. So like I'd mentioned, we're going to be working with SAP to expand across Africa and Middle East, but we're also going to be working with, we're also open to working globally as well. We're compliant with GS1 standard and offer country-specific compliance to CMOs. So this is our core management team. Our core management team comprises of a bunch of professionals, business professionals with previous startup experiences and experiences in the banking sector, as well as other IT corporations in Nigeria. Together with our board of advisors, we've combined over 20 plus years of experience in the FMCG and pharmaceutical space. Just give me a minute to look at these beautiful faces. So if you know of any large pharmaceutical industries or FMCGs that are skeptical about their products running the risk of going into counterfeit, or just basically want to eliminate counterfeit products and regain their market share that has been lost to counterfeit in the product, please reach out to us or speak to us at the E3 booth, or you can speak to us right after this session. If you also yes, so if you're also aware of other investors as well that's looking into expanding into other into Africa and other parts of the world as well, and would be interested in this sort of businesses, we'll be happy to speak to them about our upcoming $3 million seed round. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Nikisa, from me, thank you for the great presentation. And this counterfeit drugs and consumer products, is it prevalent in different regions outside of Africa as well, or is it most prevalent in Africa?
It's most prevalent in Africa at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Great. Well, if go to E3 booth, you said, didn't you?
Yes.
Go to meet, check it, and if you have £3 million to invest, that's the place to go, without counterfeit money, please.
Thank you.
Next, we move from Nigeria to Curitiba, Brazil. I'd like to welcome Christian, who is CEO of Loracare, which is a very innovative patient monitoring and integrated care relationship platform. So over to you, Christian.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank SAP for the invitation, for being here. So we are a startup from Brazil, and we are one of the main health techs in the Brazilian market. And for us, it's a great pleasure being here and looking all the opportunities that we have in Europe, in the UK. I'm going to tell you a story of our journey in Brazil and how Lora became one of the most important startups in healthcare in Brazil, and how we started. First of all, we know that healthcare has many problems worldwide. We know that data is built on silos. We know that there are many inefficiencies. We know that there are many troubles for the healthcare team, for physicians, for nurses to make all the care coordination. And this happens worldwide. This happens in the hospitals. This happens on the primary care. And this is some estimates from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that more than 8 million people die every year for mistakes in the healthcare. And this can happen by many different reasons. And apart from that, more than $1 trillion are wasted every year because of mistakes in healthcare. So there are a lot of people dying, and we are wasting a lot of money because we cannot have efficient healthcare systems. And when we look in the healthcare perspective, what we have is that we have many data that are built on silos. We have many different systems that don't talk to each other. And we see the physicians and the nurses going around trying to connect all this workflow, trying to connect the data. And it's very hard for them. And it makes very hard for the patients as well. So the question is how we can connect this data, how we can make easy to the physicians and to the nurse to promote good healthcare and quality healthcare. And particularly, I'm not from the healthcare background. I'm from the tech area. I'm a computer scientist, and my focus was always on artificial intelligence. And I got to know the problems in the healthcare industry when, in 2016, I got to know my other co-founder, and he told me the story on how he lost his daughter with 18 days of life in one hospital in our city. his daughter was having a clinical deterioration in the hospital, and the healthcare team took a really long time to notice that she was having a clinical deterioration. And when they did notice, it was already too late. She was in sepsis shock, and she died within a few hours. When he told me this story, we started to look in Brazil for the perspectives, if that was an accident, if that was an isolated mistake, or if it happened often. And we found out that actually it happens often, and not only in Brazil, but worldwide. So in 2016, we decided to start a project with the name of Laura, which is the name of his daughter, to avoid that other parents would suffer the same struggle that he did in 2016. And our main vision was to use data, to use artificial intelligence to empower the healthcare team to provide a better healthcare. We started in 2016 with a vision of the patient inside the hospital and providing a clinical decision system that's connected to the electronic health record in real time and is able to connect the patient to the best healthcare service available, giving alerts to the healthcare team of what are the patients at risk. And we started in one hospital in 2016, and now we have more than 50 customers in many different regions of Brazil, and we are in the entire patient journey, since primary care, hospital settings, and post-treatment as well. The main idea is simple. As the data is built on silos, as the hospitals, this data is not connected to payers. Basically, what you do is connecting this data and building a 360 vision of the patient. And after that, we can connect this data to intelligence and to different applications to empower the patients on looking for the best care and empower the physicians and the nurses as well on providing the best care. So that's how we do it. Nowadays, we have monitored more, we have analyzed more than 10 million medical records. We have one of the biggest data sets in Brazil in the healthcare industry, probably one of the biggest in Latin America as well. And with this data set, with this big data set, we can provide many different types of applications. The one that I will show you right now is, I will show you two. I will show you Loracare, which is it's a platform for patient remote monitoring. And afterwards, I will show you the Laura Clinical Intelligence. That's the system for monitoring the patients in the hospital. And you see that the idea is simple. It's basically connecting the data to the physicians and to the patients as well. So this is Loracare. As I told you, Loracare is a system that can be used in the back office of many healthcare institutions, and we connect this data to the patient and to the physician. So the patient can triage, can make a triage. The patient can input his or her symptoms, and this can be done on WhatsApp. This can be done on many apps. Laura is the intelligence that can connect all this different information and connect the patient based on the symptoms that the patient has with the doctor, with the physician. And if the patient is at high risk, Laura can follow the patient directly to the hospital, and the healthcare team will know about it. So imagine that with all of this data, the healthcare team, the physicians and the nurses, they will have access. They will have full access to all the clinical history of this patient. They will know what this patient reported. They will know what is the outcome of that patient. And that's how we do it with artificial intelligence. So imagine that what we are doing is to make the healthcare digital with the hospitals and with the healthcare payers as well. All the data from the patient, all the information will be centralized in just one place. And with that, you can have clinical insights, you can have many different informations, and we can empower the healthcare team to take the best decisions. And now I will show you Laura Clinical Intelligence, which is the system that's connected for in-hospital settings and is connected to the EMR. And in real time, we can take data from vital signs, from lab exams, all the clinical history of the patient. And as we have more than 10 million medical records, Laura is able to predict what patients are the highest risk of clinical deterioration. So imagine that as Laura knows what are the clinical pathways, we have much better specificity and sensitivity to better identify patients at risk. So basically what we do for in-hospital settings is to connect all this information. We're able to connect this clinical decision support system, a communication hub for all the clinical team, and a protocol management system in just one place. And the idea is the same. We connect the data, we build a 360 vision of the patient, and then we have different channels of showing this data. So the healthcare team can access the data from the patient by an app, they can see the data from the patient in real time from web systems. And they have real-time insights of what's happening, what are the patients at risk, what are the alerts, what the patients may have, and we provide these clinical insights as well. And we can connect to the microbiology as well, and we can show to the healthcare team what patients have resistance to antibiotics, what type of resistance this is, and everything is connected to microbiology in real time. This is a very important thing because in Brazil, it's very common that doctors usually spend 6 months to 1 year to collect the data from the pathogens and to see what's the clinical history of that hospital, of what are the antibiotics that are resistant or not resistant to specific types of pathogens. And with Laura, the clinicians can do it in seconds because they have the data on their hands. So that's the power of connecting the data and making and providing artificial intelligence algorithms. As I told you, we are one of the main health techs in Brazil. We were recognized as one of the top 10 health techs in Brazil for our team, because of our impact, and because of the customers we have. And this is a very important slide. The slides will show our results. We have more than 8 million medical records that were analyzed. We have done a study analyzing what was the impact of Laura after the implementation in the hospitals, and we got a reduction of 25% in the general mortality, and a decrease in the patient length of stay of 10%. We have monitored with Loracare more than 300,000 people in Brazil, and we are in more than 50 healthcare centers, healthcare payers, providers, and the pharma industry as well. This is a study, actually this award that we got from Hims Elsevier as a digital innovation award in healthcare, because we got a savings of $1 million in one hospital by the use of Laura. As they had the clinical decision support system, they could reduce the patient length of stay, and they could reduce their costs as well. And this was an award for the whole Latin America. We invest a lot on science as we are building machine learning algorithms that are related to healthcare. All our algorithms should be validated, and they are validated. We have peer-reviewed papers about the applications of our machine learning algorithms, and next month it's going to happen, the SAIL event. SAIL is one of the main symposiums of artificial intelligence in healthcare, and they selected 5 papers worldwide applied to artificial intelligence in healthcare. And this is being organized by Harvard, by Johns Hopkins, by New England Journal of Medicine. And out of the 5 papers, Laura is one of them. It's the only one in Latin America. So for us, it's a great pleasure. So I think from Laura, it's all. I'd like to thank you for your attention and for your time. Thank you very much.
Christian, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you very much for the super presentation. You've analyzed over 11 million records. How could you apply that quickly in expanding to, say, the UK? And what would you need from the UK to allow you to do something similar?
Well, we have the expertise from more than 40 hospitals in Brazil. The challenge that we face, it's very similar. because in Brazil there's the challenge of interoperability, and here there's the challenge of interoperability as well. So basically, what we would need would be to integrate our technology here. We would need to have access to the data, and we would be able to build our machine learning algorithms. Of course, we would have to study the implementation and application of these machine learning algorithms because we are dealing with a different epidemiology. But within a few months, we could validate all the machine learning algorithms we have for the UK reality.
No, that's excellent, because in the UK, obviously, the integrated care systems are very important, and we're looking to monitor the patient journey from all the different sectors. And the 10% of the most complex cases make up 50% of the cost. So being able to predict these cases and deterioration is very important. So I think there's a lot of potential for Laura. But thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you very much.
Oh. Let's see.
Hi. Oh, hello. Can I sing a song? No, sorry, I came late. Thank you. That was really interesting. I caught the tail end of that. Everyone goes on and on about big fat hospitals. Do you have any case studies in primary care?
Yeah, so we started in hospital settings, and afterwards, during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, the hospitals started to ask us how could we help them, and how could you bring this technology that we developed for in-hospital settings for out-hospital settings. So we built a system for that we call it a patient relationship management platform for digital remote monitoring that is able to triage what the patients are the highest risk based on the symptoms, and this can be done remotely. So we develop it, and this is mostly used by healthcare payers for primary care, for GPs, and for the nurses to identify what are the patients that are at risk, what patients should be monitored, what patients should not be monitored, and everything can be done in the platform. And they can select what patients have, they can identify what patients have chronic conditions, and insert this patient in healthcare monitoring pathways. And they can also identify the epidemiology of a population by this technology. And Loracare is mostly used in the primary care for patient digital remote monitoring.
All the activity is, isn't it? Yeah, that's where all the activity is. So do you have integration between primary and secondary care?
Yeah, we do.
Because I think there are lots of bits of tech that does a bit of primary care, and then some that does secondary care, but not many transcend those two places. So that is different, actually. So
yeah, that's the thing. We started in hospital settings, and then that's the most complex vision in the healthcare. And then we went to the primary care, and we have all the data connected. Someone has one more question? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Christian, for that great presentation. And of course, the legendary Dr. Tal Mahmood, who is the champion of primary care here. So in 1 minute, we'll be introducing Thomas Oliver, founder and CEO of Omnos. He's actually here. So I just want to say that very, very great to see Thomas here, because as we know, health is not about curing diseases only, but keeping us healthier for longer. And Thomas is esteemed author of Cracking Your Health Code, and also CEO, as I said, of Health Intelligence Platform for Longevity, Omnos. So over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So I just want to introduce to you to Omnos, but first I want to ask you a question, because as the CEO of Omnos and the founder, the vision that I have cannot really come to formation if the same problem we mentioned, we address one thing. And so the question is, what is this one thing that we need to truly address before cracking the code really of personalized health? So before answering all those questions, I want to talk about the driving force of change and what the last decades, let's say, how the industry has changed and actually has really igniting a very interesting ecosystem that we can tap on now to potentially achieve that. The first thing is the ever-growing burden of chronic illness. So few numbers here, but 15 millions represent the amount of people here in the UK having a chronic illness. It's estimated by 2023, 18 million of them will be having one or several conditions. 47 trillion is actually by 2028 the estimation of what it will cost globally, chronic illness. And we're talking about, big numbers that can put every country down to its knee, which already we know most healthcare systems are in debt. And finally, 75% is just a number explaining that all of those main chronic illnesses are totally preventable by changing your lifestyle, your diet, and your environment. Even up to 40% of the cancer are totally preventable. Now, what we understand, though, is the approach needs to change. And one thing that is very important is to understand that we now need to leave this sort of high-down molecular aspect to look at one cause and effect of a disease, but more at looking at our bodies at a very complex mechanism, need to understand those pathways within us, and need to connect the dots and potentially look at preventing those pathways for longevity and to prevent those illnesses. So, and the good thing is we really try to shift that. And actually, we understand with the new pandemic as well that we just had, that mainly the people who are suffering the most do have metabolic issues that are caused by lifestyle problem. So now there's this ever-growing cultural awakening. Again, because of this pandemic, we now getting accustomed to testing at home. I probably had 20 tests in the last 3 months, traveling a bit, and I'm hurting on my fingers and constant blocked sinuses. So it has become very familiar. But what about having tests that could analyze what's going on inside our bodies right now and trying to connect the dots on what we should do about it? And right now, 80%, more than 80%, actually, 88% of the consumer in the US and UK and Germany are actually more likely to go towards those options. So this is what 487, this is what a person will spend in average in the UK on wellness next year. So it's obviously this very fast growing trends, and it started a long time ago. We can go back to Arnold Schwarzenegger pumping iron and Jane Fonda video and all those things. Being a president, running is becoming, a good thing to do. But right now it has completely changed in the sense that it's really a cultural thing to be healthy. I mean, and a lot of people go to the office in their yoga pants now, right? So it's all even trend. So we are now entering really also the area of micro tracking, in the sense that we have the evolution of devices and technologies that allow us to do all those things. So to track data, we have become a really interesting cascade of data. This ring that I'm wearing, for example, tell me about my sleep, my body temperatures, all those different things. And, I knew I probably had COVID back in January before testing because I had my HRV going down and my temperature raising. I knew this was probably COVID, and I did the test, but I knew before. So that was very interesting also. So we have access to all those technology now, and they're becoming more widely available. But this is all promising. This is amazing, and we have the fundamentals for it all. But there's one big thing we ignore here, and it's the healthcare data management you just mentioned about, right? And data is a massive growing commodities, and already back in 2017, it was more valuable than oil. But and you can see with the behavior of big companies acquiring data. And if you look at Apple's healthcare with their smartwatch, they're actually looking at over $300 billion of revenue just by health data. So it's really a fast-growing commodity, and it's a commodity that actually could also benefit us as individuals. And this is what I would like you to explore with you. But the problem is, and this is exactly what you mentioned, is the siloed and disconnected aspect of all those data. So we really need to look now, if you look at the history of you have a lot of health data, but they're all scattered everywhere, defragmented, and they don't have a narrative of who you are and what it means for you right now in your context. But if you actually put all those data together, it could make a story and understand all those things. So you might have done a genetic test and it's on a company server somewhere, and you don't have access to all of those data. You have a few clues about them. You know that you are coming from Neanderthals, or Marie Antoinette was your family or something, but it's not that interesting. But when you look at all those health data in relation to your predisposition to certain disease, your historic, or even the family history you have, that's very good information to know what can be prevented for yourself, and then potentially inform you and educate you about how being proactive towards it. So the solution really, it's about really giving full data ownership and transparency to the individual. Because if you have a situation where you repeal that an institution or your doctor, or repeal your access of your data, you can actually have this ownership where you're going to be back at the center of your health, because you can have application around those data that will enable you to be more proactive and potentially be on the prevention side. And what about maybe opting in and out of sharing those data if you wanted to with health professional, and obviously having the healthcare ecosystem behind to support you on your health journey. So this is what we do at Omnos, is we're really about democratizing health. And it's a big thing, but democratizing simply means that makes the complex simple and trying to make it accessible for everyone. But what it means at I'm going to go there, individual level, is basically having an input and an output. And the input can be in this proactive healthcare system, if there's all those data available. What are your health goals? What are your lifestyle? Try and understand what you do in your daily life, your diet, your family history, potential symptoms you may have, and your genetic data. What are your predisposition to certain diseases, or potentially, certain pathways or food intolerances that can create inflammation, all these sort of things. Blood markers, what's going on inside your body right now. And how does it relate with all the other data, such as your environment, your lifestyle, your genetic data? If you're predisposed to high cholesterol and you decide to be, a big carnivore, but are sedentary, you're quite more likely to have issues with those cardiovascular diseases. Performance tests, wearable data, any type of data. But the output of it is really personalized prevention and predictive analytic. And then all the things you can do by that, by giving you personalized recommendation on potential supplements you may have or you may need. Obviously, supplement comes after food, but health empowerment. But more importantly is being you being back in charge of your own health. You now have a relationship with your own biology and you are in charge. So you're more engaged and potentially can be more proactive and makes changes. Then it's all about this decentralization, how to make it accessible. And we have amazing technology. We all have amazing computers in our pockets now, and they make quick calculations. So we can really give you real-time information. And even for health experts, having access to all those data directly that you already have, and you opt in to share those data with them, having the historic of your data, having certain markers, having understanding of condition you may have, autoimmune disease, or this sort of thing, can help them to make better decision, and also better informed decision for yourself or for the whole family. Then if we look at institution like insurance, is the same. You can have certain client data. If you were to wish, again, to share those data, and doing predictive analysis, comparative metrics, all those sort of things. Then in a corporate environment is more about the performance of your company and how it can have an impact on your production. And yes, so all those different things can be achieved. In the retail environment, understanding your preferences, your needs in terms of diet can help you make the right choices and empower you to be doing personalized shopping, basically. So data ownership, really, it's all about, sorry if I'm scaring you with this big slide, but from now, it's all about this siloed and isolated data connection. But now we have amazing technology that we could implement and use to make secure data exchanges with the blockchain, for example. AI and machine learning, which you explained very well how it can be used to actually make quicker decision and informed decision based on big data sets. The cloud, where everything can be shared quickly. And finally, real-time intervention with Internet of Things, where you can link hardware. And the output as well is about this collective learning. The more people use and upload data, the more we find out about what are the certain things to do, or how patterns can be recognized, and what it means, and developing grants and doing research. So this is what it should be tomorrow. And how we got started with Omnos, it's very simple. We do this ecosystem where we all start with a self-assessment, asking you a lot of questions about your lifestyle, your diet, your environment, symptoms assessment. And then we already know what are the area, thanks to our algorithm, that you need to investigate. Once we have those data, which comes out of very complex medical tests, but we are omnosifying it, which means that we're making it simple. And we make this data analysis and work in order of priority, what within your context, within your lifestyle, your diet, or the symptoms you may have, what is your top priority and how you can address this before it becomes critical. If it's clinical already, we have experts that reach out to you rather than you trying to reach out to them. And you can already, they will see already on their professional dashboard what the issues are. And then it's all this education part of giving you things where we explain what it means, what, I don't know, carbohydrate rates, for example, what does it mean? Those parasites in your microbiome, what do they mean to you? And what are the symptoms related to them and why they are there, and how you can then be on a journey to remove those parasites. And this is the reason why, for example, you are lacking of iron, because they're iron feeding. So you're learning about all those things and it's engaging. And yeah, so the vision again is for us, because we are at this level where we have connecting the dots between all those data and making narratives for everybody to understand what are their top priority when it comes to health prevention. The data privacy is obviously a very secure model, but we also want to give in this ownership data as an asset, in the sense that your wealth, your health could be your wealth literally, because those data are becoming a fast commodity, and you can potentially trade those data for research, for even if you want with your insurance company, because those data are very valuable. Instead of those data being siloed and being profitable to big corporation without you benefiting from it. So it's about enabling those data sharing for collective learning as well with the research. So right now, this is what we're developing, and we have all those different tests available, but at the individual level, it's already represent more than 600 unique data points that tells us about how well you are, what are your potential risks in certain things, and how you can perform, and what are the things you need to do to optimize your own health dashboard, I would say. So yeah, that was me. Thank you very much. Any question?
Thank you, Kristen. It was a visionary, excellent presentation and about holistic health and the use of data. I see this as being very valuable for certain people in the community that want to do this in quantified self and in the more higher economic bands. Do you think you can do a Omnos Lite for the primary healthcare system for something like the NHS?
Yes, we're actually sort of working on this in the sense that there's a lot of medical data that can be historical data that can be uploaded to the platform that already would have recommendation, and yeah, we can. It's also when things are clinical, we do tests for prevention. But all those tests are medical, diagnostics. If we look at, for example, our microbiome test, look at a lot of different markers, not just dysbiosis, which is the good and bad bacteria. It looks at occult blood and all those different things. So if things are clinical, we refer directly to the GPs, or the GP intervene. So we now we're only a year old, but we are starting to develop as a relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. Any other questions?
Thank you. That was a really good presentation.
Thank you.
There's so many people who are saying, "Oh, give patients their records and all that stuff." Well,
yeah.
Newsflash: patients don't understand those records, and I think this is a much nicer way of being able to share that data and support behavior change, which is the biggest problem. I just wonder, have you got some information or data on, because firstly, you don't want to overwhelm patients with too many of these buttons like genomics and stuff. So as Tony said, a light version would be a good place to start. But have you got any data around the impact that it's had on changing the behavior of patients?
Yes, we start to see that actually. First is, again, it's about when we call this omnosifying thing. This is an internal term, right? But it means a few things. First is about disalienating the language. So when we talk about democratizing, is disalienating the language, trying to remove almost the dogma you will have in legal or medical, to trying to explain in layman's terms what that means for you. Okay, that's very important. Just to come back to your first point, and the second point is about the states of clinically, emergency. You wouldn't do a brain surgery on a platform, right? So what I mean by that is there's a whole system of education, but also an ecosystem with health professional to support you on your journey. But what we can do here as well in the language is, obviously, when you call about genetic, we only report on the things that are not, we don't do rare disease, for example, or we don't necessarily report on the BRCA genes or this sort of thing. Also because there's so much misinterpretation about it. But what we say is your genes are not your fate, but knowing about your predisposition will empower you to make better decisions, right? So it's all about the language around it, and also the support system you create around on how to, when it's more clinical, on how to address this. But it's better in a way that people, when they start their own health journey, and especially, let's say, a genetic test, what people usually, the reaction they have is, wow, I'm sort of meeting my own biology here. It's funny. This is me. I can see myself in all this. And this is how I am wired. And just this, creating this relationship, it's like an intimate relationship you create, and then you cannot escape it. So then you're on this journey already. You're just more proactive, right? Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Tony. I bet you wish I'd not come now. So carry on with that light idea. I think.
Yes.
I think you could have, say, diabetic patient. It's all about behavior, isn't it? So
yes.
You get their HbA1c, so that goes in. Then you use their data from their wearables about movement and stuff, and support their behavior, and then you
Yeah.
do their HbA1c in another
Yeah, exactly. So
6 months later.
Yeah, it's
and I think if you just have that aspect and leave it, nothing else to confuse people.
That's what
would
we're
be
doing with the
really clever.
prioritization. So that's the whole Omnos 2.0 part, which is all about prioritization. What we know now is your main options. Option ones is basically come at option one. If it's we know from your genetic test you're predisposed to type 2 diabetes. We know from, or just from your lifestyle questionnaire, that you're very sedentary, overweight, and you actually do a blood, one of our blood marker, and your HbA1c is out of range. Then we're going to start to get educating you, you have your content video about low glycemic index foods, all this sort of thing. And even if it's already sort of clinical, we would make sure you have something like a glucose monitor and educate you even further for maybe 3 months with a health practitioner this is the type of food you should avoid, this is the one, and look how it reacts in your own body. And this is real-time intervention. And if you do that, you're really changing the behavior of someone. And this is the prioritization that we are doing. It's very important to have this hierarchy. And this is the whole sort of algorithmic nightmare we had to deal with for two years or more, to avoid all those conflicts and making sure things works in prioritization. When you have thousands and thousands of data, it's quite a complex thing. But we've done that, yeah.
No, thank you. Before you leave the stage, Thomas, I think that was such a fantastic presentation, because I see many companies that talk about longevity and preventive health, but to engage so well with the primary care thing, I think is because so many ignore the primary health doctor and try to circumvent, and you're missing the biggest opportunity. But Dr. Tal Mahmood, you should take that name, one of the most innovative GP practices in London, but he definitely would be somebody to speak to, because I think there's so much potential to bring the two together.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have the advanced version there, but something more streamlined for the public health practice is worth a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
But thank you very much to Thomas.
Thank you very much.
So hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode, which is about digital therapeutics and introducing DTX Impact. Very happy to introduce you to Tony Kyprios. Hello, Tony. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Barry.
Excellent. Glad you could join us. Thank you. So we'd like to take a step back. We have this word DTX, digital therapeutics, which we hear a lot, but I think it's not necessarily a well understood or well defined concept or phrase. So let's take a step back, please, Tony. And if you could tell us from an expert perspective, what is DTX?
Thank you, Barry. Well, it's in a way been happening for a long time, but now it's become much more formalized. It started off as telehealth and digital health, etc. But now it's digital therapeutics is probably best defined by the great work of the Digital Therapeutics Alliance. And it's, to paraphrase it in 3 ways, it's to prevent, manage, or treat a disorder or disease. Secondly, it's a medical intervention driven by software. And thirdly, it can actually be independent or complementary to drugs. So they're the 3 main foundations to DTX.
If you could help us, Shafi, to understand a little bit, please, about your background and committees and so forth that you're involved in.
So yes, so I'm, of course, Shafi Ahmed. I'm a surgeon based in London, working at the Royal London Hospital, and I've been a cancer surgeon for the past 30 years. Over the last decade or so, I've moved more into med tech and innovation and work with colleagues, of course, here on this call together. I think in terms of the government policy and driving change, I've been involved in what's called the Cancer 5-Year Forward View, which was run about 3 or 4 years ago. We looked at the whole cancer service across the UK and how that should be changing to become more digitalised and more relevant to today's society. I also sit on the NHS Assembly, which is 50 members from different disciplines across the NHS are working on how to implement the NHS long-term plan for 2030. And that's chaired by the Chief Executive of the NHS at the moment, which is Amanda Pritchard. I've also worked with corporate companies like Vodafone, looking at how policy in 5G, for example, could help governments understand the capabilities of connected health. The last thing, I've been involved with governments across the world, including Abu Dhabi, working with the Ministry of Health to understand how they could transform their society and healthcare using digital-enabled systems and bring entrepreneurship into the region.
Okay, so we also have Tony Kyprios. Hello, Tony. Good to see you.
Hi, Barry. Nice to be here.
So to begin with, Tony, if you could just share with the audience a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. My background has been in corporate innovation within telecoms and consumer goods and in media. And during my time in telecoms, we were sort of early pioneers within mobile health, as it was called back then. I've also been involved in corporate venture capital, so as an investor, so very much involved in the venture capital journey that many of these companies have to go through. And finally, probably the most relevant and the most painful often is I've been an entrepreneur several times over myself, most recently with my own telehealth company, which we exited in 2017. So that's my sort of 3 dimensions of looking at the problem.
Yes, yes. No, that's excellent. Thank you. And good to hear about your impressive career and accomplishments.
Hi, my name's Tal. I'm a GP. I have been a clinician for 20 years, or been a GP for 20 years, and I've had a variety of roles, which include working on the board of CCG, the Professional Executive Committee, and also chair of our GP Federation. I've also got an interest in digital health and have recently done an MBA at London Business School, and I run a large GP practice in West London where we try lots of innovative ideas and have an interest in research.
Incredibly interesting conversation so far, and these themes of digital therapeutics and software as a medical device are important for healthcare and for addressing some of the biggest challenges in healthcare. So Shafi, we'd like to continue the discussion, and we'd like to explore what are some of the challenges in digital therapeutics. If you're a DTX company, what's an example of some of the challenges?
So there's a number of challenges, Barry, I think the companies face. One is around real-world validation. So for example, adding the treatment, it could be an app or other kind of therapy, and may or may not be in conjunction with, of course, a pharmacological agent, but showing the efficacy around patient utilization or improving outcomes or improving access to medicines, wherever it is. That's really hard to do sometimes, to access real patients in the real world. And of course, the data that they present with, how valid is that compared to other measures that we might have for the same treatment regimens, for example? So that's one thing. The other thing is about sharing data, keeping data, understanding what that means as you go forward. And that's the issues around confidentiality, the ethics, the governance around the capture of patient data and showing that on a wider scale. And the last thing that we forget about is that user experience and user interface. We often use that in computing kind of language, but actually, is that relevant for people in that community or in the hospital setting to be used? And what does that look like in terms of access to those kind of therapies? The last thing is regulatory affairs, of course, trying to get into a system, understand the regulations of different continents, different jurisdictions, in terms of how they overcome some of the barriers so that their framework is used. The last thing is remuneration. How do you use that? How do you remunerate? How do you make the case for accessing money that will then drive sales or allow people to use that with resources available to it from a healthcare system? So those are a few of the kind of immediate things I think about.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you, Tal. We also want to talk about some of the challenges if you are a DTX business. So let's look at that, please, briefly. So Tony, what are some challenges for DTX companies?
Oh, you're on mute, Tony.
I'd like to build on some of the comments that Tal actually made, which is very, very, very profound, actually. And one of the key things is the difference to pharma, in that the actual cost to market for pharmaceutical drug and molecular or biological or vaccine is $1 billion. The cost to market of a digital therapeutic could be $5 to $10 million. So the actual cost of getting there is much less. Secondly, time to market, as Tal said, you have a 20-year patent, but it could take you 10 to 12 years to actually get to market, whereas time to market is much faster for a digital therapeutic. It's a digital speed, 2 to 4 years. And that's very different from how pharmaceutical companies behave and manage and operate. And that I come from it from very much the consumer behavior that Tal mentioned, and also the digital and mobile design. And the design with digital therapeutic is very iterative with rapid feedback loops, which you can't do with drug discovery. So the actual methodology and approach and culture of a digital therapeutics company is very different to a pharmaceutical company, although now there are several similarities or elements. There's regulatory approval, there's clinical validation, and typically a prescription is required, and that's the way we're going. So on the active agent, so with depression, serotonin reuptake inhibitors is the active agent, whereas in a digital therapeutic for depression, the active agent is actually user engagement to comply perhaps with cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's many differences, but also increasingly loss of compliance and regulatory dimensions that create some of these challenges. So before, as a digital health company, a wellness company, you didn't have any of these challenges. You go to market, but then again, there wasn't really the efficacy, there wasn't the discipline, the rigor. And so one of the key challenges we found in talking to many of these digital therapeutics companies is the actual quality of team and cross-functional capabilities you need to have. You know, from mobile design, data science, regulatory compliance, content creation, clinical trial design, working with pharmaceuticals, and also a lot of the compliance around quality management systems, information security, risk management. So the actual demands on small companies is much greater than it has been before. And that's one of the first challenges, to create that really effective organization that we're finding.
Very good. Thank you for that. We would also like to explore, let's say, for example, we have a company from overseas. We have a Californian software business. They're getting off the ground in digital therapeutics. How would they overcome some of the challenges that you've just mentioned? Let's say, for example, they'd like to enter the UK market. What are some opportunities for them, or how would they begin to address that?
So I think the first thing to say is the UK market is becoming more mature over the last 18 months. We've seen a complete change of thinking due to the pandemic, allowing great acceleration of introducing new ideas, new technologies, or indeed new therapies to help patients in the UK. That's the first thing. So the mindset has shifted. Secondly, we have a number of organizations or stakeholders across the NHS, for example, who are now really encouraging innovation. That's NHSX or NHS Digital or the Academic Health Science Network. We're now understanding how to bring an idea to market to support companies from outside. And the other thing that's also changing is the kind of understanding of how we overcome the barriers to adoption, okay? And I'm sure we'll discuss that more about clinical trials and how we bring therapies in and do the necessary validation across those lines, supporting those companies. And of course, there's many other areas that we'll discuss over the next few minutes, of course.
Dr. Tal Mahmood, who can talk about this from the perspective of a clinician. So we're talking about what DTX is, Tal, and we're talking about examples of companies in digital therapeutics. So if you could give us some thoughts there, please.
Yeah, I think there are lots of, the traditional way of treating people has changed. So traditionally pharmaceutical companies would go through a huge research and development program, have clinical trials with drugs that you take orally, and have a patent which lasts for 20 years. And all of that has changed, actually. There's been quite a few changes in the treatment options available. There's increasingly biotechnology which produces kind of changes to the molecular structure of DNA. And digital therapeutics is another arm of the treatment options that are available. So, for example, if you look at some drugs, such as drugs to do with depression, for example, serotonin or citalopram, 60% of the effectiveness of the drug is due to a placebo, which means that the effects can't be explained. The effect, taking the tablet results in an improvement in 60% of people, even when they're not taking the actual pill itself, even if they're taking a sugar pill.
Yes.
So you kind of think, well, okay, well, perhaps there's a behavioral element to the clinical outcomes that we see, and actually, digital therapeutics is one of the ways in which you can look to support modifying behavior, and as Tony mentioned, it can be used alone or with medication to improve things like compliance or but the main thing is for it to result in improved clinical outcomes, and there's and to change behavior is really quite difficult, so it helps to nudge people along to perhaps modify their behavior. I think it's digital therapeutics has started relatively recently. However, there's been a fair amount of traction, and there's increasing amount of evidence to suggest that it is likely to have a significant improvement of either the normal medications or taking it, or having it by itself.
Yes.
I suspect it will be here to stay.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Would it also be correct to say that the fundamental approach to being able to provide some type of treatment or enabling tool to a patient, which is software and digitally based, is of course so profoundly different from the history of treatments based on drugs that there are bigger challenges relating to enabling the DTX provider to engage with the clinician who's prescribing. And I think there's an issue which also has to be considered there. In other words, clinicians' willingness to prescribe, their understanding of it, therefore the broader challenges for DTX businesses to understand what how these things occur in the first place, especially if their background is not coming directly from the pharma industry.
Yeah, Barry, I think that's a very good point. So Germany, for example, with Digger, is one of the leaders in the field. But even there, with all this work they've done, the actual awareness within the physicians and psychiatrist professions, for example, is less than
Yes.
4%. So you've got 96% that aren't even aware of this, and of the 4%, there is the trust and support issue in terms of how am I gonna, does this really do what it says it does? It's very different to my training, or this sort of area. So just because you're prescribed doesn't mean your work is done. I think it's where your work begins.
That's a good point. Yeah, thank you, Tony. So Tal, from your perspective,
It is really interesting, the comments that both of you have just made around lack of adoption from clinicians, and so I think there is this kind of challenge for digital therapeutics firms to kind of to speak the language of pharmaceutical companies and also clinicians, and basically it comes down to something around harm. So with drugs, there is, if something doesn't go quite right, then there's potential of very serious harm, and that's not a good place to be. With digital therapeutics, there's lower risk of that. It may not be effective, that might be the issue, but there's lower risk associated with digital therapeutics, which then moves you on to, well, okay, what about the benefits? And I think for the benefits, it's really difficult for digital therapeutic firms to be able to quantify that number. Something may feel right, something may feel, that is the right sort of thing. It should work, it makes you feel happy. A good example is gardening. So if you look at gardening and the improvement of physical and mental health, there is an awful lot of evidence to suggest that this has that this can improve your physical and mental well-being.
Yep.
And yet it's not something that is, you don't generally go to a clinician and have be prescribed a course on gardening. There isn't, a digital therapeutics tool which suggests, prompts you to go along and garden.
Yes.
But actually, where I think where the answer lies with adoption of digital therapeutics is really around being able to get high grade evidence to suggest the effectiveness of an intervention, and that's, I think, the key of patients using it, or and in particular clinicians using,
Absolutely,
recommending it. So going back to,
so we're talking about DTX, digital therapeutics, how it came to be, some of the challenges for DTX businesses. Tony, what are the challenges? Let's say, for example, you're a business overseas and you have an established DTX product or service, and that's working in another country, and you want to enter the UK market. What are some of those challenges? And we're also, of course, introducing DTX Impact as an organization. So we'd love to learn as well about the connections there.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Say, for example, I mean, we talk to many companies from USA, Canada, Europe, and beyond, and they may have had clinical validation and university research at, say, Grenoble University in France, and they've proven and got data from that university. They've done initial clinical trials and got data and efficacy. Now, that some of that is very valuable and very valid, but to actually come into the NHS system, you have to now get some local data, get some of the actual information and clinical trials with a UK hospital, with a GP practice, or whatever. So it's a whole new method of engagement. You probably would not have the credibility in terms of the medical profession to know where to make the connections. And we see many scale-up ventures that have made success in other countries that really fall over in terms of finding the key opinion leaders, doing the clinical design, and just massive delays, 6-12 months when nothing comes out. So one of the key things we like to do is remove that friction and know the operational methods, know the key opinion leaders already, know the hospitals and GP practices that can do rapid pilots, moving on to clinical trial design. So getting the data and the proof points and the credibility in the UK is very important, and knowing the different routes. There's many different routes. The UK market is a little bit less prescriptive than, say, Germany, where you have many more ways of getting into the right place with the CCGs or the AHSNs, etc. So finding the right route for the right product and service with the right people is always a matching exercise, and that comes from having very high quality, well-connected physicians and doctors in the team. So that's very important that we found.
Yes, excellent. We have heard a lot from the audience that, of course, a typical misconception from people from overseas is that in the UK, you have a single payer system and a single provider of health, which is this thing referred to as the NHS. And of course, it's an ongoing, I think, challenge to help people from overseas learn about the complexity of the healthcare system in the UK. And for all intents and purposes, I guess one could say that there is no such thing as the NHS. There isn't a phone number that you would dial to say, hello, I'd like to enter the UK market. Can I speak to the buyer, please? So, for example, regarding hospitals, maybe it's a little more obvious. You find a hospital group, maybe you talk to them. But what about primary care? So for a foreign business who is doing something in DTX and is looking for perhaps doing proper evidence studies and clinical trials in primary care, does DTX Impact have an opportunity or a service to provide in the world of primary care and an ability to help customers understand that?
absolutely. My shout out to the world is come along to the UK, because I think it's the perfect environment for organisations to come, because there's a lot of pressure already. The system needs some help and support, and we need to explore innovative ways in which we can cope with the demand. I think, for example, this winter I suspect will be difficult.
Yes.
But also the infrastructure around is supportive. I've seen the change in the last few years where there's a bigger push towards supporting digital ideas. Personally, I think I don't really like that word digital. I think it's not about we need to really understand what the problem is rather than thinking about it being a digital solution. But there are plenty of issues that I think we need some help with, and if people have ideas which have worked abroad, have had some traction, and the UK is a great place to be. I think that traditionally the model of healthcare is dominated by hospitals. If you look around globally, primary care often doesn't feature very much, or if it does, then it's not necessarily in a kind of meaningful way. I think in the UK is a little bit different in that respect. Here and in Singapore as well, Cuba have a stronger primary care focus, and actually that lends itself to provision of. I'm a bit biased because I'm a primary care physician, but cost-effective healthcare. So I think increasingly in the NHS is being organised structurally reorganised into coordinated units where primary care, secondary care, mental health services, social services all come together and commission services together. That's sort of work in progress at the moment, but primary care is a key element of that. We know our patients very well. I've watched patients grow old with me. I've been in the same place for a long time. They knew me when my hair wasn't as grey, and I've watched patients grow up, get married, and looked after their children. So there is a long-term relationship there, which hospitals perhaps don't necessarily have.
Yes,
and it allows us to support proactive care and wellness, whereas hospitals, you often go there if you have a specific condition.
Exactly.
So I think primary care is well organised. The UK is a great place to be. It is very supportive of technology, and there's funding and organisations whose main reason for existence, such as NHSX, is to support digital innovation. And also there's a really strong primary care in the UK, which I think lends itself to getting the evidence for digital therapeutic organisations.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's been a really informative and insightful view of primary care in the UK. Tony, what's your view on that?
I couldn't reinforce Tao more. Secondary care is very much an intervention when somebody has a progressive disease state, but primary care is that long-term journey, and it's particularly important for prevention. And one of the key initiatives within NHS and major investment areas is the integrated care system, is social care, mental care, hospitals, GPs, etc. And that continuous feedback loop and adherence of a digital therapeutic over time can offload off of the hospital care system into the home environment. And when you do have to go back to hospital, you have that record, you have an understanding of the data that person has been going through, dosage, personalization, all this sort of stuff. So I think the integrated care system movement within NHS is going to be a massive opportunity for many digital therapeutics companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Tony. A really good additional observation there. Thank you for sharing. So we also, we're talking about DTX and what DTX is. What are examples, Tony, of some of the leading players in the digital therapeutics ecosystem? If you could give us some examples of businesses, what are they doing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've been, as you know, Barry, and with Giant, we've been talking to many of these companies, and many of them have been to the conference and spoken. So the ones that are real pioneers and we've been speaking to are, for example, Happify in mental health. They're probably the world leaders in engagement and activation from their gaming background and applying it in terms of behavioral change. Another one I really I'm impressed with is Achille from Germany in the area of ADHD for children, using gaming there as well. In America, Pear Therapeutics is
extremely extensive as a platform, particularly start off with substance abuse, but they're in many other areas. From the UK, Big Health has been incredibly successful in insomnia and raised a lot of money, and now is prescribed with the NHS.
Nice.
There's a company called Cognito that's a spin out of MIT for Alzheimer's, which has FDA breakthrough designation. And we've talked a lot about behavioral change and CBT in the mobile phone, but they use advances in neuroimaging to be able to look at audio and light strobing and interventions to actually break through the blood-brain barrier rather than through a molecular bloodstream. So watch this space, because it's really moving on from purely CBT and mobile into some very novel interventions. So, and the other thing, of course, is, as Tal has mentioned before, you get that feedback. The pharmaceutical companies, if it's complementary to pharma, they can see side effects, they can see compliance, they can see adherence, they can personalize. And all of these successful players are really getting that data play correct.
Tony, thank you. That's a very good point, and I'll certainly agree with you, and good additional insights on top of Tal's descriptions of primary care in the UK. So once again, thank you to Shafi, thank you to Tal, thank you to Tony. This has been a presentation from the team leading the Dtx Impact business, which is helping foreign companies to enter the UK market. If you're working in Dtx overseas or in diagnostics overseas, we have identified a business and enormous opportunities to do business here in the UK. So once again, thank you to Tal, thanks Tony, and thank you Shafi.
Good afternoon again, everybody, here and internationally. I'd like to introduce now something very important, because one of the things I mentor a lot of startups in digital health, and one of the key areas that they fail on is building great interactive, resilient and scalable digital products. So I'd like to introduce Balint of Bene, who's going to teach us all about how to build great digital products for the healthcare market. Over to you, Balint.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm Balint Bene, founder and CEO of Bene Studio. And today, within this half an hour discussion, I would like to have a real discussion with you. And to support it, I know it's quite the end of the day, and you must be tired. So I brought some chocolates, I brought it to that people who ask questions, because I would like to share my experiences answering your questions relating how to scale a digital product. And to kick off it, let me just highlight 3 things about myself. So I always organized things. When I was 5-year-old, I organized police from kids around the block. So it was my first business, first venture. And a bit later, I founded 2 startups. And after that, I worked at enterprises. So based on these diverse experiences, I realized that the best way how I can help others, I can help the ecosystem, is with the digital product consulting. So this is how Bene Studio started. And at the beginning, we worked in diverse industries, but I had a personal situation. My grandfather, he died after a faulty hospital treatment. And at that point, I realized that there are so many things to improve, and I wanted to be part of this improvement, to help other families, others, to avoid similar problems. So it was the point when I realized that health technology is not just one industry for Bene Studio, but it should be the focus industry. It should be the specialty of Bene Studio. And a few words about Bene Studio. So at Bene Studio, we design and develop mobile and web applications for different health tech companies, for startups, for scale-ups, and for enterprises as well. And it's a team of more than 30 people. We are present in the US, UK, and we have a delivery office in Budapest. And we are active organizers of the ecosystem as well. We are organizing a health tech networking club with more than 200 participants, mainly providers, investors, specialists of the health tech field. And today I want to share with you our more than 100 project experiences, which we gained during the previous 10 years. So this is the moment when I will want to show you an example. And I hope that through an example, we can see a case. And based on that, you can have different questions, which I would be really happy to answer. So in this case, Dynamicare Health is our client. And they are an addiction care digital startup. And they already operated on the market when they faced an issue. They had only one engineer for mobile development, and that engineer left the company. On the other hand, there were a need and the pressure for develop and grow fast. So they started a cooperation with Bene Studio, and we provided on one hand capacity for them, so now they can develop faster, and they don't have to worry about leaving clients, people management, and other issues within the technology team. And we also have them with other expertise which they didn't have in-house, like user experience design or other specialties like architect. So the solution was setting up a team of experts and starting a continuous cooperation. And within this squad, we have a project manager, a product designer, a mobile engineer, backend engineer, security officer, and software architect as well. And part of the team is just part dedicated, and other part is working more on the application. So this setup provides a really calculable and scalable solution for Dynamicare. And let me talk a bit about the project management, because this is key in startups. And project management is like 90% of the reason for failures. So usually the experts are good in what they are doing, good engineers, good designers, but with the wrong project management, we can face with disastrous situations. So this is why project management is a key. And in many times we underestimate the importance of project manager, because what we see is the end result, like a design which is more tangible or a code which is working. But behind that, if the project management is not adequate, then the result won't be the desired result. So in this case, when we worked with Dynamicare, we organized our new developments in sprints. So we are working in 2-week sprints, and we fix the upcoming sprint. So it provides a stability for the team. So what's defined for the next 2 weeks, it's there, and nobody touches it. But we also provide the flexibility to the startup, because you may know it even better that in a startup, everything is changing all the time. So the requirements are also changing. And over the 2 weeks for the upcoming sprints, we have a roadmap, and we have a huge flexibility for that, what developments to put into the upcoming sprints. So this way we can combine the effective delivery on short time and the flexibility for midterm. And another important thing for founders or business side managers, product managers, is their control and to have a transparency what's happening under the hood when an extended team is working on the product. So for that, in this case, we have regular meetings for the plannings, for the alignment, and we use an asynchronous chat for the ad hoc communication. We also track the tasks in Jira. So the client side product manager can see what is the progress. So we provide the transparency as well, and therefore we provide the control as well to the client. But they don't have to micromanage. They just tell their priorities in a high level to our project manager, and the project manager takes care of all the other details, break down the tasks, schedule the time of the different experts, deal with the people issues, and we also can solve not just the basic HIPAA and GDPR compliance, but special third-party risk assessment requirements as well, which is needed in case of dynamic care. So in health tech, it's an important aspect. And now I would like to give you the opportunity to ask your first questions.
I'll ask something, Balint. I think it's really good that you mentioned project management as key to managing these things. What do you find is the difference between some startups going and saying, I'm going to build my own team, have my own architect and developer, versus in the earlier stages working with somebody like you? What's the pros and cons?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks. It's a really good question, and there is no good or bad solution. So it depends on the actual status and actual phase of that company. We have clients where the majority of the design and development is delegated to Benet Studio. So the core team can focus on the product concept, on the sales, on the marketing, and the healthcare core business. It's one model which can work better if the communication is seamless between the stakeholders. So in this case, the key is having a strong project management on the extended team side, and having a strong product management on the client side. So if that two people can discuss with each other regularly, then the directions will be aligned, and the cooperation is seamless. So the benefit of this model is that if the startup is quite small, they can focus their internal energies on their unique aspects, and they can delegate a big portion of the work to a partner like Benet Studio, and they don't have to split their focus, their budget. It's one model. Another model can be when everything is designed and developed in-house, and when it's a mission for the company doing this way. And it also can work. I see good examples when, for example, the founders are coming from the engineering field. Their strengths are in the technology, so they can naturally prioritize the techie things over the business things or the healthcare things. In that case, they have to deal with that aspects somehow, but the product itself can be in good hands in that cases. But what I also see is when such a tech-funded company starting to grow, like they are in Series A, and they have to scale up the product in a huge tempo, then they usually make a decision to match this in-house focus with a healthy balance of outsourcing to an external extended team. Just because building up a team internally takes 1-2 years, and they just can't afford that time. And at that point, they have more money and they have more pressure from the investors and from the market than what they can win with just keeping everything in-house. Another thing can be setting up the priorities. So in every business, we can have core elements, which are the unique unique propositions of that business, and we should have a lot of other elements which are mandatory, but not a unique element. So usually it's a healthy setup when the really core healthcare algorithm is in-house, but the application itself is provided by an extended team, so the company can focus on the very core solution and can balance it with an external partner.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This is a sort of design-related question. How important is it that there's a really established brand before coming on to doing the interface for the software? Is it a two-way conversation? Is it something that you expect to, the look and feel and the voice and all of that to be integrated in that, or is that something that comes back the other way from your own sort of development that feeds back into the branding of the?
So your question is related to how to balance the sales, marketing, branding of a product and the actual development of this solution.
How integrated are they?
Wow, it's a really good question. And before answering it, let me deliver your chocolate. Thanks for the great question. Yes. So based on our experiences working with early stage startups who just have the idea, and working with scale up companies who have a bigger staffs and bigger track record, what we can see that the sales, marketing, branding, and the product development is going hand in hand. I saw a few companies where one aspect was too strong, too much in the focus, and it's never that good. So, for example, there are companies which are founded by professionals or techie people, doctors, and sometimes they really focus on the solution itself. So they build it for like several years without showing it to anyone, without really getting it out to the market. And we, Bene Studio, at the beginning also were involved in such developments, and we made mistakes. So even myself at that time made mistakes because I didn't challenge that aspect back then. I just tried to help developing what they asked for, and I just accepted that they don't want to deliver it to the market, to test it with real users, collecting real feedbacks. But after a year of development, we realized that the product is not matching with the demand from the market. So I learned that time that even if the client is asking for just development, hiding the solution and just doing it in the darkness, we now always make a pressure on them to release it to the users, at least a smaller group of test users, and to bring feedbacks back into the development. This is why this 2-week sprints really useful, because if an experience is coming back from the field, then we can put that change on the roadmap like 2 months from now. So this way, the roadmap is a healthy organization, and we always can update it based on the feedbacks. So this is the experience with too much planning and secret around the product, and too much focus on the building and less on the market. But sometimes we can see the other side as well. when the sales is the driver, which is good in general, I believe. But sometimes when there is an ad hoc need from a client, and if the product is too flexible, like if they just hear about a feature request, they implement it instantly in the application, and next week they hear another kind of request, which is the complete opposite of the previous weeks, then they want to implement that other change. It causes problems with the product because on a midterm or a long term, it will be a messy product, so it will be no focus, no real solution for an adequate audience, just a bunch of different features which are changing all the time. It's not good for the business, first of all, but it's also not good for the technology. So it's harder to maintain a system which is lack of consistency. So this is why our experience is the better is somewhere in the middle. So being a bit strict with the clients and with the feedbacks, and not to implement everything on the spot, just keep a bit of time for that. But on the other hand, being open to the audience and releases, so release the solutions frequently. So I guess it can be a good balance between the sales marketing and the changes and the product development itself. And thanks for the great question. Let me give you this fantastic chocolate. Yeah. Who is asking for the next chocolate?
Can I have some chocolate?
Hi. So you talked about providing solutions to different clients, and I was just going through your website as well. So it's from different fields. Clients come to you for different solutions and different software and these type of stuff. So you talked about sales and marketing as well. And my question is, like, how do you balance between your expertise and client demand? Because the thing is, like, if the client comes up with some sort of a demand for you and you don't agree with that, or you have some different thing in mind, so there's a clash of interest as well between your client and you. So how do you deal with that, and what's the percentage of your expertise and your input versus client's demand?
Thanks. It's a really good question, and a really challenging situation at the same time. So what I prepared with, which is connecting to this question, is I collected a few tips if we want to fail, how to do it properly, because we talk a lot about how to be successful and so on. We have a lot of materials on the internet how to be successful, but less how to fail. So if we want to fail properly, then I collected a few experiences, most of them from my past. So I failed a lot during the different projects, smaller and bigger failures. And if we discover it, we can realize, okay, how can we maybe avoid that failures if we don't want to fail that much. Yeah. So in that situation, when we have demand from the client and we have our own expertise, it's always a kind of internal and external fight to find the good balance. But my experience is that if one side is too strong, like everything is just done how the client defined, or everything is done without any communication with the client, both are a really good solution for a failure. And what you can do is set up the process to code into the process the interaction. This is why we have the stand-ups with with our clients. And even if there is a client who says that I don't have time for stand-ups, we always force it to keep an agile structure, because even if the client thinks that, oh, I described everything in a document, just read it and implement it, we know that, okay, 1 month from now, there will be big issues, because it's never that easy that she or he just write down and we just read it. So it's better if we have real spoken communication on stand-ups. This is the most important. And another thing is that if we can discover, okay, what are the strengths of the client, where maybe the majority of the recommendations or requests or decisions should be done by them, and what are the strengths of the extended team partner, then it will be a healthy cooperation. So for the client, it's an added value for the same budget that shouldn't be avoided. That they not just buy capacity, but they buy expertise as well. So it works to build on that. And what happens really often in such a client and consultant situation is that there is a huge demand for new features, because it's useful for the business, and it's a visible thing in an application, especially for a client from the business background. For them, the feature is the valuable output, and if we talk about refactoring or maintenance of the system or further development of the background, it sounds like some scary things, because it means for the business just cost, but nothing visible on the surface of the application. So for example, if we just follow the so-called feature push, and we just develop the features and don't take care of the health of the system, then we will face a huge problem, which is called technology debt. So we raise the technology debt when we don't care about the background questions. But after a quarter or after a half year, we will face a huge failure, huge problem. So it's better to maintain the system step by step, which we usually do within the 2 weeks sprints. So within a sprint, we recommend putting always something valuable for the business. We never recommend a sprint just refactoring, because it's annoying for the business side. We always recommend something useful for the business, but we always recommend to put in the sprint something which is good for the health of the system. So it's kind of a balance, and this way we can cooperate.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let me give you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, guys, do we have more questions? Okay, then let me talk a little bit about that aspect, how to balance and how to fail, how to avoid failure. So we discussed a bit about the features and the quality. Let's discuss a bit about the roadmap. So when we have a roadmap, then it's if we would like to fail, then it's useful putting really different features on the roadmap, which came from just last minute client requests, and being too flexible in that. Or if we would like to avoid it, then it's useful being a bit more strict with the users and keeping roadmap both flexible in midterm, but managed well, not to let in everything. And if we talk a little bit about user experience, then less is more. So if we would like to provide a really usable application to the clients, especially for B2C, for consumer users, then we always should take care putting in less features and thinking about how to remove features from the application instead of putting in new features, which sounds a bit weird and counterintuitive, but it pays off. Just think about the most popular applications like Uber or Google search, that the simplest solution is the best in most cases. And another thing is the functional versus non-functional requirements, which we covered a bit so far. So if we have requirements, what functions we need in the applications, we always should take care of the so-called non-functional requirements as well, like what devices should we support, what operation systems or browsers should we support, and so on. So this, from a business perspective, these non-functional requirements are usually undervalued, underestimated. But if we would like to provide a seamless solution for the users, then we have to calculate with equal focus and the time and budget for the non-functional requirements than what we dedicate for the functional ones. And what I brought you as a takeaway, I realized that the best digital product consultants are the classical philosophers. So I brought two takeaways. Walter said that perfect is the enemy of good, and it's true in digital product design and development. So when we would like to have a perfect solution, it will be a disaster. So it's better to balance an okay solution and the market, the technology, to balance these aspects, and this way we can find a healthy setup. And I learned from Aristotle that the golden mean is a good rule for many situations. In many questions, it's a good answer. So as we checked, the extremes in product development are never working well. So if we are facing a question or a situation, similarly what you both asked, either just the clients or just the experts, just the market or just the technology, the answer in most cases is a golden mean. So we should find the middle way, and that way we can have a healthy business with a good digital pillar as well. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Balint. Very pragmatic presentation. I think people should really, who are thinking of developing a digital product, to speak to somebody like Balint, because this is very truthful and very clear and very experienced. And always good to finish with a quote from Aristotle, I always find in a presentation. So this morning, Matthew presented a really good presentation from Gallon Growth, and I hope you can live up to the expectations of the morning, Matthew. So over to you.
Can I, yeah. So good afternoon. I think we're into the final session. I'm going to probably try and get you out of here on time. So this next presentation is about digital health partnerships, specifically around insurer digital health partnerships, but there's lots of information generally about digital health as well. So I'm from Gallon Growth. I'm from Singapore. And we basically focus on digital health. We only do digital health, and we analyze digital health across the world. So before I get into a little bit more about who we are, just to set the scene of what I'm going to cover. So a little bit about us and what we do. Not too much on that. I'll get through that pretty quickly. I'm going to give you a quick top line of what we see in digital health worldwide, some of the key trends that we're seeing in digital health. Then we're going to have a quick look at some of the insurers and what they're doing in digital health, who they're partnering with and why. And then a look at some of the specifics around insurer partnerships as well. And then what can we expect in 2022? So very quickly, just about our scale and growth. So yeah, we're based in Singapore. We do have a regional office in Switzerland as well. And what we do is we go out and we analyze every single digital health partnership worldwide. We aggregate lots of data around that digital health venture. So we collect about 200 different data points on every single venture worldwide. We bring that into our platform, and then we use that platform to advise and help insurers and pharmaceuticals on how to partner with what kind of companies in digital health. So if an insurer or a pharma has got a specific problem statement and they're looking for an external solution, that's where we step in and help them. So in terms of our data, we cover in our platform and our analysis 8,500 digital health startups worldwide. We look at 8,700 investors in digital health worldwide. We track 22,000 partnerships in digital health worldwide. And those partnerships are typically done by one of or many of 7,500 corporates, again, worldwide. So all of that data together amounts to about 150 million data points on our platforms around specific digital health ventures. So just a quick couple of slides on what we're seeing right now. So in 2021, the market in digital health ventures worldwide is continuing to grow, still just under 10% compound annual growth rate over the last 5 years. So 2021, in the markets that we track, we're now at 8,500 digital ventures worldwide. So the growth is slowing, but it's still substantial. And a lot of that is driven by continuingly strong, very strong VC and private investment into digital health. So in 2021, we're on track to have a blockbuster year this year of about $40 billion of investment going into digital health. That's a substantial, it's probably going to be double what we saw in 2020. So that's driven by the US market. So in the US market, we're looking at probably $31 to $40 billion dollars of investment in 2021. It's driven by a couple of things. One of them is in the US, there are a lot of special acquisition vehicles and share schemes called SPACs. That's driving a lot of that investment. But the other thing is the growing maturity of digital health. Two quick examples here. Sword Health, a digital therapeutics company in MSK, it's American. They recently raised $150 million in a Series D. And Hinge Health, even more, a $650 million round E, giving them a $4.1 billion valuation. And there are about 20 plus unicorns in digital health in the US. So very, very strong growth coming out of the US. And that's feeding into greater innovation, greater number of digital health startups. So where do we see those digital health startups geographically spread? Sort of no surprise, I don't think, but North America, particularly, of course, the US, total about 2,800. That's 2,300 in America and the balance in Canada. APAC, which is where I'm sort of stationed, 2,300. Of course, many, many different markets in APAC. But the big ones there are China, which has got about 700 digital health ventures, India about 600, Japan about 200, Singapore about 200. So a very vibrant region there. And also, of course, Europe. In fact, actually, if we drill into Europe a little bit more, seeing as we are in Europe, so far the markets that we tracked, we're seeing about 2,000 ventures in Europe. And you can say, I won't read them out, but you can read them here. So UK, very strong, as you can tell by walking around the exhibition today and yesterday, 600 ventures here, and Germany not far behind on 400. So very vibrant situation in Europe, and hopefully more to come. Just a quick slide on DTX. So we split digital therapeutics out, about 11% growth year on year there, about, 309 ventures in DTX, and about 242 of those have got regulatory approval of some shape or form. So quite a mature different segment of DTX, and spread over a number of therapeutic areas. Mental health is a very significant therapeutic area for all digital health worldwide. So very quickly, drivers of insurance innovation. I won't talk about this too much for too long, but really 4 key drivers of insurers. So insurers are the second biggest category of industry vertical after pharmaco investing or partnering in digital health. 4 main reasons for that. First off, the insurers typically, and I'm sure by your own experience, the insurers, it's not been a great experience working with insurers or being a customer of an insurer. Very paper-driven, very salesperson focused. They are, bless them, really struggling or meeting the challenge, let's say, of transforming the business, digitizing their processes, digitizing the channels, digitizing claims, etc. Quite a slow process for them, but they are really trying to tackle that. And one of the reasons there is customer satisfaction. Insurers, probably akin to estate agents in terms of NPS scores, typically very negative NPS scores across the world in insurance. So something they're trying to address. Second one, of course, technology enablers, Fitbit, Apple Watch, etc., driving an enormous amount of digital biomarker data. And the insurers are now capturing a lot more of this than they ever have before, and combining that with upskilling their capabilities in digital analytics, data analytics, and big data. The other big one is the wellness category, which has really exploded over the last 5 years. Vitality, which you may have heard of, really set the pace from 2004. But pretty much every life or health insurer worldwide has got some kind of wellness app of varying degrees of sophistication. At the most basic, they might track your activity in terms of walking and give you a discount on your premium. At the other end of the scale, we're going to look at Prudential in a minute, who are building out a complete ecosystem on their wellness platform. 4th big driver, of course, is COVID, which has accelerated everything around digital health, but was a particularly strong wake-up call for the insurers who got blindsided really by COVID and realized that they were dependent on a physical sales force, on physical teams handling claims, all of which got disrupted, particularly in APAC, by lockdowns. So very much a strong wake-up call there. One of the big winners in digital health categories is telemedicine. And across the world, this is true, but particularly in APAC, a 20-fold increase in teleconsultation appointments. And the insurers looked at that and realized, hey, if we can do that with teleconsultation, what else can we do using digital? So quick look at where the partnerships are focused. So no real surprise here that they tend to be where you've got a strong contribution from the payer, i.e. the insurer, in a health system. So typically the US and APAC, 232 partnerships in the US and 478 in APAC, mainly driven by China. These are the top 10 worldwide insurers doing partnerships in digital health. A lot of US companies here, Cigna, Humana, Aetna, actually I think Aetna are Dutch, Kaiser and Anthem are all US companies, but we have got a European one here, AXA. And at the far end there, Ping An, an absolute giant in China, as well as China Life. And Ping An especially in China is, even the US insurer companies look at Ping An as a real trailblazer in terms of digital health. What are the areas in which the insurers are focused? Typically, they focus on areas that are complementary to things like critical illness cover, so oncology, cardio. So in this one here, if you exclude disease agnostic, diabetes is a very significant one of 9%. Oncology and mental health is also significant. We're going to cover mental health in a second. And then if we look at digital health cluster, InsurTech, telemedicine, patient solutions are very significant there. I just wanted to talk a little bit about mental health, because mental health has become the #1 therapeutic area of focus for digital health companies in both the US and Europe. certainly measured by inbound investment, a really significant growth there. About over 1,000 mental health partnerships worldwide, and 11% of those are now by insurance companies. So the insurance companies are the biggest partner of mental health, digital health ventures worldwide. And why is that? I'm sure we're all acutely aware of sort of mental health and the impact of COVID and how that's been very stressful for all sorts of reasons. In the world of insurance, some of the more financial impacts are that a lot of this is Australia data, by the way. So in Australia, mental health is now the third biggest claim after accidents and MSK. So a very significant percentage there, 11% of all claims. Fast growing as well. There's a 53% growth in mental health claims from 2013 to 2018. Mental health claimants are also, if they are absent from work, they're 50% longer away from work than other claims. So if you're an insurer covering group health insurance for a client, for a corporation, that's a very significant cost on your loss claims ratio. So a snapshot of mental health, and these are the top corporate partners and government bodies in mental health. And you can see from this top 5 here that actually 3 of the top 5 are insurer. So Cigna, Aetna, and AXA. And some really interesting partnerships. So Cigna with Talkspace and Aetna with Wiser. And actually, let's take a closer look at sort of what some of these look like. So Wiser, key partner of Swiss Re, Aetna, as well as the NHS. This is an interesting company, Indian-based, $5.5 million worth of funding last round. We give every venture, by the way, a score out of a 100. These guys score 71.6. So for an Indian venture, that's a very interesting, mature company coming out of India, doing some really significant partnerships, including one here in the UK. Just one more. So Mentalis, based out of Germany. This one is not so high on the maturity score. These guys are looking at depression and substance use disorder and partnering with 2 European insurers there. I'm going to skip over this one and get into just a quick example. So Prudential, UK HQ'd company. Many people will be familiar with Prudential, but Prudential are now very significant in Asia. And they have a product called Pulse. And this is probably the best example of an insurer ecosystem application. So Prudential have now done 47 digital partnerships, about 20 of which are in digital health, and are busy kind of plugging all of that external capability into the Pulse app. And what they're doing is they've moved from simply tracking steps through Fitbit or the Apple Watch and giving you a discount on a premium, through to actually building these as a companion, really through your entire health journey. So everything from prevention, so that might be capturing data of your habits, if you're a smoker, how heavy are you, and trying to understand kind of risk of future health problems. They're looking at disease diagnosis and treatment, nutrition coaching, particularly in markets like India, where diabetes is a very, very significant problem there. And then bringing in some of the insurance products in terms of protection, the insurance coverage products, being able to tell you if you are, covered for something that they're sensing in this area, do you have that protection built into your current cover? And if you don't, increasingly offering you a way to buy that insurance through this application. So this is a kind of dual-fold strategy, really. One is to keep their customers healthy, reduce claims, and secondly, really using these applications as a way to drive customer acquisition. In fact, just on this slide, so they, in their half-yearly report, just published August 2021, 30 million downloads, as I said, 47 digital partnerships, and this has driven $158 million worth of sales. For an insurer which is making billions of revenue, that's actually not that much, but it's the beginning of something I think probably quite significant. And many of my other insurance clients across Asia really look at Prudential and these numbers and the ability for something like an application to reach the underinsured in places like Malaysia and the Philippines, for example. Just a quick analysis. I think this is the last graphs. So what kind of digital health partnerships are they doing? So again, a lot of disease agnostic, but again, mental health, very significant. So 10% of their partnerships are in mental health. Cardio, again, pretty significant, and nutrition and diabetes. Interestingly as well, Prudential have got quite an interesting mix of investing in early stage startups as well. In fact, the bulk of their investment has been early stage, so Series A, some in the growth stage, Series B and above. And they're also a partner of Babylon. So Babylon is one of the 10%, so a publicly listed company. In fact, the Babylon relationship with Prudential is exclusive to them in Asia, and it covers 11 markets across that part of the world. So, yeah, just to wrap up, last 2 slides, and then I think we're pretty much done with the conference. So I don't know how many of you are from a digital health venture, but if you are, a lot of them come to us and say, how do we work with insurers? In fact, we did a conference with insurers and digital health partners last week. And the advice was from an insurer, actually from Prudential, be super clear. If you're going to work with us, be super clear on your proposition and what KPI in insurance world does your proposition really tackle? Which is sort of an obvious thing to say, but they have so many pitches from people that it's really key to understand. They're looking at improving customer satisfaction, driving down claims, or driving up annual policy revenue. So it's normally one of those 3. Of course, they're really big, complex organizations, so finding an internal champion is absolutely critical that help you navigate that internal structure. Understand your stakeholders. What are they really motivated around? What are they KPI'd on? How does your solution help them? How does your solution make them look good? And of course, they are complex, large, slow. They are regulated heavily. There's a lot of compliance teams, a lot of data privacy issues. So have the right expectations going in. You're not going to change an insurer. They are a particular breed. They move at their own pace. And you just have to work and adapt to that pace. And then lastly, for the insurers, last slide, I think we're going to see the insurers move from what has been a completely non-digital way of doing business into much more of a hybrid way. So we're going to see still salespeople, your traditional sales agent that goes knocking on the door and selling to friends and family. That's going to still continue, but increasingly they'll be armed with, a tablet, an app that's giving them access to a world of information that's helping that sales process, and also for the customer as well. Something like the Pulse app is going to become a primary way that you're going to start to interface with an insurer in the future, in the life and health segment anyway. What else? End-to-end wellness platforms. Yeah, so I've already said this, moving into quite an interesting space in terms of really a true companion for digital health and keeping you healthy right the way through your relationship with insurer. The other key one they're going to start to move to is they start to understand now some interesting implications from the level of data and information they're beginning to capture. It used to be actually the insurers did not really have that much data. They were disintermediated by a traditional sales channel. They never collected any direct data really from the customer. So now with something like wellness platforms connected to a digital input device, they're actually capturing a lot of very personal information now. They might start to use that to actually get to dynamic pricing. So the actuarial people who base pricing on 30, 40 years worth of experience of mortality rates, Now they're going to have the ability to get fine-tune and get into segments and understand risk by particular customer segments in a lot more granular detail. And that might mean that there are winners and losers when it comes to pricing, depending on what they see in terms of your lifestyle. So that could be a good thing, but there is also some interesting regulatory kind of issues that might emerge in that one. And then, yeah, the last one there is, if you've ever applied for a life insurance policy, it's really generally quite painful. It's very slow, particularly if you fall outside a risk tolerance and you go into a manual underwriting process. That can take 6 months. So a lot of the insurers, and it's expensive because you've got to do fluids. You've got to get the customer to a doctor, take the bloods, do the analysis, analyze it, and then decide if you're going to underwrite them. So what increasingly they're trying to look at is, how do we get to non-invasive testing, liquid biopsies, data to understand risk on a better basis so that you can do straight through underwriting. So that's it. Thank you so much for sticking with it. That's it. That's it from me. Has anybody got any questions about not just insurance, but anything about digital health or any trends around digital health worldwide?
I'll start off and I'll pass over to Tal in a second. You presented about pharmaceuticals in the morning and insurers now. Obviously, insurers are a very distant second, but in terms of the necessity and urgency of digital transformation, would you say insurers are way ahead of pharma due to urgency?
I'd say probably. I'm less familiar with pharma because my particular clients are insurer. They're quite different beasts, because whereas digital health is really quite fundamental, when you think about therapeutic focus areas, it's very core to a pharmaceutical. It is somewhat core to an insurer. So this is why they're slightly lagging in terms of volume of partnerships versus, say, pharmaceutical. However, I think they're, particularly this year, actually, I think there's been and again, it's back to COVID, there's been a real wake-up call of the need to rapidly transform and actually stop talking about this, which is what they've been doing for like a decade. They all knew that this world was going to come one day, but now it really is here. So they're all scrambling to really kind of innovate quickly. So I think we could well see them sort of overtake pharma and become, with something like Pulse, a lot more innovative potentially than pharma. I mean, especially in a course of direct-to-consumer model.
Yeah, I think they're more vulnerable, and they should be thinking.
Thank you. That was really interesting, actually. First time I've stayed awake during a presentation on insurance companies. So well done, you. It is interesting, isn't it? Because insurance companies are bigger than pharmaceuticals, and they haven't got a conflict, because there's cannibalism, isn't there, for a pharmaceutical company to work on digital therapeutics and stuff. So the conflict in insurance, though, is, I think you can find to monitor watches and movement, but a lot of what we do in clinics is around what patient symptoms are, or patient reported stuff, which then, I suppose, do you think that will result in patients not reporting symptoms? And also, if they don't honestly report symptoms, then will that then, because they always say if you don't
pre-existing condition,
or if you lie at any point, we'll arrest you and torture you, and we will validate your insurance and use fraud, and you go to court and all that stuff. All that stuff you hear while you're waiting on the phone. So I just wonder that the next step, other than movement, is going to have to be asking patients about symptoms, and that's the big conflict there, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting area. You probably saw it earliest in sort of DNA, where actually there's a lot of regulation passed that insurers cannot use DNA results to, price you out of the market, for example. So there may be some aspects of that sort of come in and that give the consumer the confidence to actually, okay, I am willing to share my information. But if you were, say, a 6-year-old male, overweight, smoking, and with a drinking habit, you're probably not, you're not going to be incentivized, especially if you know if they're going to be moving to dynamic pricing. But it won't ever, depending on the level of cover of the insurance, it will never just be self-disclosed, I don't think, unless the technology and the way of validating the customer inputs get so sophisticated, it's very hard to game the system. So the higher risk segments will always be streamed out or something like that, and there'll be probably still a manual check. But the way in which that manual check is going to happen will be a lot more sophisticated and quicker than it is now. We just worked with an insurer actually in the US who are very interested in early diagnosis of cancer, and engaged us to actually find companies that were doing, not involving biopsy, but actually understanding DNA fragments from certain types of cancer in the bloodstream as an early diagnosis product. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of sophistication coming. But yeah, for high risk pools, the insurers are very risk averse, and they always will be. That's their business. So there will always be safeguards to shore up higher risk groups.
So dynamic pricing sounds fantastic, doesn't it? But actually, it raises premiums for the average.
Could do.
It only works if you're young and fit and well.
I think that's the thing that's will be the big. You're right. That's the potential, negative of this. Yeah, but this is where I think. Well, the first thing is it's going to take actually at least 5 to 10 years before the data and preventative health apps, they truly start to understand. Does any of that make a difference actually to mortality rates? Because they don't really understand it yet. And then on the actuary bit, where they're trying to forecast mortality rates, that's a very, very slow moving beast. So when I talk to them, they say between 5 and 10 years before you start, we're in the position where we might be able to do sort of some kind of dynamic pricing. I suspect it will be sort of playing around the edges. They'll be very careful in terms of government regulation as well. But it's certainly going to be some, there's going to be some interesting moral as well as commercial things that start to come from this. Yeah.
Because I was just going to, sorry, my name is Becky. I'm co-founder of Lumino, which is a Dtx company. Just going on from that, I think that there are some interesting ethical issues. So my background is exclusively pretty much in mental health. And as soon as you start talking to mental health charities in this country about the insurance market, you will hear an awful lot of horror stories about people not being able to get coverage for all sorts of things, and being, people who've got particularly sort of complex backgrounds, particularly if they've had suicidal ideation or suicidal kind of episodes in the past. Being honest about that with anything to do with an insurance company is actually really, really difficult. So just thinking from a digital therapeutics perspective, as opposed to a broader digital health thing, what sorts of opportunities do you think are there really for digital therapeutics? Because I was sort of thinking that our kind of route in was much more with the providers, potentially private providers, who are providing services that are insured.
I think for looking at prevention, providers are not fussed about that. They say they're not, but they're not really. I think the insurance contracts are a better partner.
For prevention.
Would you agree?
It's very much, of course, in the insurer's benefit to keep everybody alive and healthy. So they're incentivized to do that. I mean, the question around does DTX in mental health have any kind of positive benefit? Go and have a look at some of these examples and check them out. I mean, I don't know how much real world evidence there is yet, but the potential is there. Certainly in terms of treating anxiety, calmness apps, sleep disorders, that kind of thing. I think the DTX piece can help. I don't think anybody would be claiming that if somebody gets into significant distress or is suicidal, these apps are not the answer. In fact, actually, if you heard the Happify one yesterday,
yeah,
they have that emergency.
And this is
out.
my area. So it's just really interesting that sort of talking to people who have developed really successful DTX products that are used in cognitive behavioral therapy to help people with various sorts of things. And we heard from Charlotte yesterday from Big House. I think what they've done with sleep here is absolutely amazing. But when they talk about their kind of go-to-market, I don't hear companies like that talking an awful lot about insurers and insurance companies making these sorts of products available to their users. I wonder if they're missing a trick, actually.
Well, sorry, just a real quick data point there, which is it's quite new for insurers to actually even have to worry about mental health in a way, because actually the Australia example, the reason that slide's in there is that the Australia government passed a law, and so have India, saying that actually insurers have to provide coverage around mental health.
Well, and the Australian system is a whole other thing when it comes to mental health, because you don't really get counselling on their national health services we do here. So there's some very, very specific things about the Australian system that make that interesting. But
it's either AIA or AXA did an interesting product in Singapore, which covers things like obsessive compulsive disorder and some certain kind of bipolar disorders as well. So it's quite early for the insurers in this piece, but I think they can see, certainly over the last 2 years, all the way the metrics are going with mental health and the way it's hitting their bottom line. They can see that it's a significant issue. So that's why you're seeing a lot more activity there, at least. Yeah.
Really interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Any last questions? No, I think we're good. Over to you, Tony. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Thanks for closing with an excellent presentation. And I'd like to thank everybody in the audience here and through the online channel, and also to the giant staff and team who've done a fantastic job, and Barry. And we're looking forward to welcoming you in 2022. Thank you very much.